we had the top women, our top women winner being Gyno, and they were startup. They were focusing on or redesigning the gynecological experience. They identified the causes behind gaps in testing for the potentially cancer-causing HPV virus. And so they were trying to work on a user-centered platform offering home testing and telehealth. So we were very happy with that. The launch was in Cairo, and we're continuing with that hopefully this year as well. So there's a lot going on in that arena in our area of the world.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. And when you're looking at that area and you're looking at where these sorts of efforts are taking place, where do you hold the most hope? Which area of women's health tech do you see making the biggest difference today, where you see it making a big difference tomorrow?
You know, there's so much to be done. I mean, specifically in Egypt, for example, where we're a very populated country, and we're forecast to become one of the most populated countries in the world. So any efforts are, of course, welcome, but it's important to understand that from a very young age, women need all the support possible. So any femtech intervention is important. Mental health, for example, we saw that one of the winners of last year as well, Sira, was Lebanese mental health company, and their focus was on creating a safe platform for women to come to roundtable discussions online and give support to each other and to have free access to mental health support. So that's one of the areas that's up and coming, mental health. The woman is the nucleus of the family, and we are very focused on her well-being in general, but that was one of the areas that we're seeing as, very important. And with specifically seeing there's underinvestment in general in women, in women companies, women-led companies in the region. But that's a specific area. I think that's important to focus on and support.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the areas where you see some need for improvement from your standpoint?
Need for improvement. So basically, again, with the population, there's a lot to be done. Egypt specifically, it's nice to be in this part of the world right now because there is a focus on women. There is a recognition on the importance of the female. You have a campaign that's under the patronage of the president, focusing on women, and it's called 100 Million Health. And it's nice to see that it's shed in a positive light. It's not called 100 million disease, it's called 100 million health. The efforts are tremendous. I mean, just in a couple of decades, where you went from something like early breast detection not being there, you have NGOs just focusing on that, and millions of pounds going towards that, eradication of Hep C, lots of efforts towards family planning and awareness raising regarding that. As a company, we are here for her health, and we are really that. We're trying to partner with the different stakeholders on the ground, because we do recognize the importance of partnering that with these initiatives. You can't do it alone. So with us, the government, the UN, international organizations, because a lot needs to be done in that area, but a lot has been done.
That sounds like it. It sounds like there's a lot of good progress coming. And again, I think one of the things we have in the community that's joining us here today is this amazing group of people who are passionate about healthcare and passionate about women's health. Obviously, given the HITLAB Women's Health Tech Initiative and the network there, and what kind of organizations are existing in Egypt and the Levant region, Eastern Mediterranean countries that are helping support women's health tech and women's health in general.
So with women's health tech, it's important to note that we're enabling with digital literacy. More and more women are becoming, and the data supports that more and more women are becoming digitally literate. And that's important because you can't reach women, if they're not, able to, if they're not there. Just to note the importance of where we are now, we were talking about things like FGM laws, for example, in Egypt, where you couldn't think of them before, but now they're there. We're tackling an issue that needs a paradigm shift. And with that, we need to reach the women. You need to be able to not just have face-to-face interaction. Virtual awareness raising is super important in this area of the world. We have projects where we were declaring, for example, entire villages FGM free. And on the day of the declaration of an entire village being FGM free, you hear someone in the background saying, I mean, do you think the woman presenting right now didn't get FGM for her daughter? That's not the case now. You're able to reach a woman on her phone, talk to her, enable her voice, where she has her own power. Even with family planning, even though it's her body, it's a family decision. The contraception method that she uses is not her choice. She would go back to her family. Now you're able to reach more and more the woman, and she's empowered to make her own decision.
That's fantastic. Well, this has absolutely been wonderful, and really appreciate all the different resources and all the different topics that you're bringing in from this perspective of women's health in Egypt and the Levant region. So thank you very much for that, Mai, and best of luck to you. Looking forward to staying in touch. Please come back to join us again soon.
I will. Thank you. Bye.
That's fantastic, and just a lot going on in Egypt. And again, you'll be hearing more about these topics at the New York City Digital Health Week, the Innovators Summit at Columbia University, coming up June 27, 2029. Join us today if you want to click on the QR code and click on your 20% discount as well. That Ainsley has just popped into the chat box. There's a HIT Memorial 23 is the discount code to take off anywhere up to several $100s in your tickets. I would love to have you join us in person at Columbia University, June 27, 28, 29, to meet hundreds of other VIPs, invite only, apply only people, and a number of investors, buyers, and digital health innovators that will be at that meeting in New York City. So we're really excited to have next up a leader in the women's health space, Indira Maladi, and looking forward to talking to her about what the good work that she's doing at Curio, which is one of the leading women's health tech platforms out there, and one that HITLAB is currently studying. We just recruited almost 150 patients for this study in roughly 3 weeks. And so we're really excited to be talking to Indira about her good work at Curio. Indira, if you could just provide the audience a little bit of background about what you do and yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Indira Maladi. I'm the Senior Manager for Research and Development at Curio. My primary focus at Curio is to support clinical operations as well as commercial operations for a number of our implementations. In terms of background about Curio, I'll be very brief. It is a digital health company. We are based in Princeton. We are a startup, and we focus on developing evidence-based behavioral and health interventions for women across the cycle of life.
And really impressive. And I have to say, it's been impressive working with you on the Curio study. As the principal investigator in the study, I've been really enjoying the work with you and just your leadership and what you do to bring research to life within Curio, and just an incredible app in general. And I think one of the things that we're talking about today, because of it being Women's Health Month and just obviously mental health is so predominant in that, is around the leadership that you're presenting and Curio is presenting in the area of mental health and women's health. If you could talk a little bit about your role there in terms of generating evidence and making sure that as director as manager of R&D at Curio, what that means to you as the leader there of evidence generation.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, what I do as the manager for research and development, I work closely with several of our teams, our product team, as well as our commercial team, to understand what the evidence generation needs are, where there are gaps, where we are strong, and to design studies, including writing the protocol, often in collaboration with the HITLAB team to fill those evidence generation needs. One of the other things I think is really critical is that we've done very in-depth research on, what has already been done in the field of perinatal mental health, and what gaps are there overall that we can help fill, and how can we design studies that answer those pertinent questions.
Yeah, that's absolutely critical, right? Because it's all about the right questions that we're asking. And when you look at digital health solutions overall, and you obviously are one of the experts in this area for women's health and mental health, where do you see the ability for digital health solutions to bridge this health equity gap that we see across the ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll speak specifically about women in the perinatal period and digital forward apps or platforms that support them. But I think a lot of those learnings are actually applicable across the ecosystem. So, specifically for women in the perinatal period, there are huge barriers to accessing behavioral health care. I will also just say as an aside, our flagship product is called Mama Lift. It is a class 1 device that reduces risk of anxiety and depression for women who are currently pregnant or who have recently delivered. Despite ACOG guidelines, that's the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, many women are still not screened for behavioral health conditions in the perinatal period. We know that about 63% of OBGYNs report finding it too difficult to screen women for behavioral health conditions. And even of those who are screened and identified to be at risk, 75% of them receive no treatment at all. Of those who do, there's additional challenges. It's hard to find time to make an appointment. You may forget about making your appointment. If you do get an appointment, it's often 3 to 4 months out, which is particularly salient for the 1 in 3 Americans who live in the federally designated mental health professional shortage areas. 1 in 3. It's really startling, can be extremely difficult to get face time with a mental health provider. Especially for women in the perinatal period, there's so many additional barriers: childcare issues, transportation issues, cost, stigma, and for those who have returned to work, the inability to take time off from work to take care of mental health. And when you do finally see a therapist, it's often once a month at maximum. And when you look at the racial and ethnic disparities too, you'll see some really, really startling things. You'll see that, among African American women, they are 57% less likely to start treatment for postpartum depression, and Latina women also 47% less likely than white women. Number of reasons for that: racial bias, stigma in that community, challenges getting care in the first place. I think digital is really well positioned to have a completely different journey for patients. Our digital solutions include AI-enabled algorithms and built-in clinically validated screening tools so that women can be identified way earlier in the patient journey. Rather than waiting until after you have delivered, you can be identified in the 2nd or the 3rd trimester and immediately access a digital forward intervention, evidence-based intervention, as well as Curio's curated network of therapists and coaches who are specialized to treat the conditions that women are facing at these times in their life. The other, aspect too is with the digital solution, and this is the part that I think is widely applicable across the ecosystem, of course, is that you can access these solutions in the privacy of your own home, late at night, while women are, maybe rocking their baby or putting them to sleep or breastfeeding. For Curio in particular, these features of the solutions combined with the curated network really effectively improve access to the contextualized, evidence-based, culturally relevant care that women need.
That spells it perfectly, right? And that's the culturally relevant is so critically important, and the way that Curio is doing that is spot on. And when you talk about Curio, when we always see the tagline "technology with empathy," talk a little bit about empathy and why that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the tagline for Curio. So across the woman's life cycle, there are so many changes that have an impact on her mental health and her well-being, from adolescence to family planning, pregnancy, childbirth, raising a family, menopause, so many hormonal and physiological changes. And especially when compounded with the psychosocial factors, you often result in symptoms of anxiety and depression. that's why Curio's approach is to really address the whole person health and take an empathetic approach. We're providing behavioral health that is contextualized for the phase of life that the woman is in. And moreover, we're augmenting it with a human touch provided by health coaches and therapists who are trained in maternal mental health and in those the specific challenges that occur in the perinatal period. It's really a paradigm shift away from the traditional model of face-to-face therapy or even telehealth, because this is one platform that recognizes the unique challenges that women face based on their phase of life and provides evidence-based, accessible, and culturally relevant care accordingly.
That's fantastic. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Again, we've got folks from all over the world, hundreds of folks listening in here, and obviously would love to hear any other words of wisdom that you can impart before you sign out today. What else would you like to leave the folks with here today?
So, I would say there is, I would say check in on your patients, the women in your life who may be needing additional support. I think there's so much stigma for women who are, often in the workplace, who are facing mental health issues and for whom it's difficult to access, behavioral health care, try to restart the conversation, reframe it as something that is accessible and needed for everyone.
Brilliant. No, that's absolutely fantastic. Again, Indira, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, especially working on this big study. So thank you very much for joining, and have a terrific holiday weekend. Take care.
Thank you so much. You too. Take care.
And, we're really excited just about everything that's going on in women's health and mental health. And obviously, don't forget to click on this QR code here to join us relative to for any one of these opportunities for supporting the Women's Health Tech Initiative at HITLAB. We'd love to have a way to work with you and your teams in terms of supporting the Women's Health Tech Initiative. You can join Organon and certainly Genentech and Roche and Ellipsis and all the major companies that are out there supporting this initiative and the research and the evidence generation behind it to help people find the best solutions and implement the best solutions and make sure that we're investing in the right direction for women's health tech. And again, we're going to move on to now talking to one of the leaders in digital health for a number of decades and a good friend for a long time, Meg Columbia Walsh. Hi, Meg. How are you doing today?
Good, Stan. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear. It's great to have you.
Good. I'm out in the woods of Woodstock, so a remote call today.
Good for you. Good for you. Getting ready for the long weekend, I hope.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, look, I mean, no one knows women's health tech and certainly healthcare better than you. You've been leading companies going back to the 90s, and it's just really on the avant-garde of providing the best digital solutions to large swaths of women around the world. And now you're a leader at Amazon and all the good stuff they're doing in healthcare. But give the audience a little bit of background on yourself. You've been doing a lot, and it's just amazing how busy you are. But maybe a 2-minute background on yourself first.
Sure. I am a by mistake entrepreneur, but I am a dedicated 35-year healthcare technology, digital healthcare executive, caring really about how the patient was going to be impacted by all of it. So I founded Health Tech, which was the first digital health agency in the industry. I sold that to Interpublic Group. I founded CBS Health Watch, which was a female-led, founded unicorn before we even used that word, and took that public. That was the basis for consumers' health on the internet. And then went on to do more. And the most recent, which we're going to talk about today, was an artificial intelligence company in 2016. And the impact of AI, when I saw it, was as impacted as I personally was when I saw what the web could do for consumers in 1996. And I think AI is going to have tremendous benefit. I think we're going to have to be very careful how we use it, talk about it, et cetera. And I'm going to just touch on that today. And we're going to expand it more at the summit. I am always thrilled to be here. I encourage everybody on the line to really sign into these HITLAB events. We just do great things. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And we need these discussions, and all our entrepreneurs, like our last guest, just phenomenal opportunity. If I had 5 offices and millions of dollars, I'd just put 5 entrepreneurs for AI right now, because the potential is incredible.
Yeah, let's dig into that, because I think that's what everyone wants to hear about, especially given the tie that you're seeing between AI and generative natural language processing, chat, and women's health and mental health. Talk a little bit about the overlap there and what you're seeing come out that you're really excited about.
Yeah, let's back up 1 second in defining it. And so artificial intelligence combined with machine learning and the advances in that technology is what's really exciting right now. In addition to that, the move to the cloud by companies where they can have access to technologies on a as needed basis, turning them up and down, means more people can use this advanced technology than ever before. That is really important background. A few terms that are key. Machine learning on top of artificial intelligence means that every time I, as a consumer, a physician, a researcher, interact with the technology, that technology is going to refine itself, learn more. And this is not invasive. This is really, I feel, very important in healthcare in streamlining our points for that. The other key thing in these technologies is the predictive layer. So artificial intelligence alone and machine learning aren't really that impressive until you start to layer on the predictive nature of the technology, the dynamic content assembly as it's reading that data. That is really key. And let's talk about a few examples of that. If you start in the research and development, the drug development, the most exciting thing about AI is the amount of data that it can ingest, predict, and then provide insight to. So if you're a researcher and you're doing drug development and you're using what humans can't possibly analyze, but computers can, huge amounts of data that are coming in with a predictive layer to analyze it. That predictive analytics can provide us insight to treatments in a time period that we haven't had before. We will be able to improve that time to market tremendously. The other thing about AI is the combination of technologies. So now that we are able to inexpensively analyze the entire genome, for example, put that for a doctor or patient on top of a artificial intelligence machine learning algorithm, and all of a sudden, we are seeing results and insights that we truly have not been able to see before. And so, that is really powerful. Clinical decision support for physicians, where you can analyze the data, the images, the test results, everything almost instantaneously, using a platform that's predictive with artificial intelligence, simply means the diagnosis can be so much more accurate of that physician and in real time. These platforms are providing this data instantaneously. And because of the amount that it can look at so quickly, insights that we haven't seen before, which is the truth. So all of these pieces have been around for so long. We've had data analytics, we've had artificial intelligence, but now the combination of that is just fantastic. From the basics of operations, just running more efficient hospitals, running more efficient, physicians' offices with the ability to even just run your operations more efficiently, to the very nuance of looking at research data with artificial intelligence. It's just an incredible breakthrough.
No, it really is. And one of the things that we were just talking about with the Organon executive from the Middle East region was around where we really see the biggest gaps and the biggest digital divide, and how health tech can, and digital health certainly can help close that divide. Where are some of the biggest opportunities that you're seeing where we can apply digital health technologies to help reduce the digital divide in women's health and mental health?
Again, these technologies, certainly, if you look at the combination of wearable technology, for example, which is available. So globally, when you look at the cell phone penetration, when you look at the penetration of Coca-Cola, what did I say that? Yes, it goes to the most remote village in the world. The Hunger Project has loaded onto every single Coca-Cola truck a water purification system, a way to reach the women in these villages to improve healthcare. When you look at wearable, when you look at the ability to combine these technologies and to provide that at a reasonable cost, like J&J originally did with the UN to do text for baby, when we first started using texting, again, we have all the technology, but as the corporations look at financing what we're going to do, I think there, Stan, is the opportunity. There is the opportunity for the executives in the companies to really start looking at the solution backwards. And I'm not saying that we don't ever. I'm simply saying that with the advent of all these technologies and trying to run a company at the same time, first we had mobile come in, then we had the texting come in, then we had the social media, et cetera, all the way to today. And now we're at artificial intelligence. But if our top 5 topics are maternal health, maternal mortality, reaching women to improve cardiac outcomes, which is still an issue today, now we start to look at the cloud. Now we start to look at the advent of artificial intelligence with predictive technology. Now we start to look at technologies that you're hearing so much about, like chat GPT, for example. It's the prompting of that we have to teach the patient. How are we going to ask? How are we going to determine the accuracy of the information? That is the partnership with the corporations, and learning AI in a different way, not just being pitched to, but what are our solutions in the next 3 years we need to hit, from drug development all the way across the divisions of our company, including commercial, and how are we going to combine that? What combined resources are going to use? And now that we've invested millions in the cloud, how are we going to teach each division to use that with the ability to take advantage of this predictive analytics, data ingestion, artificial intelligence with machine learning, et cetera? That's the exciting opportunity for the patient, because ultimately, Stan, that's who it's going to hit. If we can do a better job of really focusing our strategies from the outcome backwards, because artificial intelligence will absolutely improve clinical outcome. But we have to do it in a very stepwise, organized way backwards that lands at improved healthcare for the consumer and an improved clinical outcome for the physician, the system, the hospital, et cetera.
Good for you. Yeah, and you're spot on there. And it really, you've been around and you've been doing this since the .com age. So you know exactly what it is to bring patients into a system, a platform, a tool, going back to oncology.com and everything there. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of empathy. Talk a little bit about empathy-driven technology and tell the audience, again, we have a lot of digital health startups, a lot of digital health executives who are building these products, a lot of folks from big hospital, big health plan, big life science who are building these platforms. What would be your parting words to them on driving these new platforms with empathy, and how should they go about doing that?
Empathy is an interesting word. I'm going to use empathy in education. What I don't think we've done as well as we should have is the tabbed spiral notebook I want shipped to every consumer in the world that teaches them how to use all of this. I think one of the most important things as we start to touch consumers with both wearables as well as these artificial intelligence, conversational abilities and advanced search abilities is teaching them how to use it. to go to the basics, to say, this is how you prompt it. This is how you use it. This is how it's going to help your healthcare. This is how you take your wearable, where now you can check your, EKG and everything else, not EKG, but the readings, the blood oxygen, everything you can do on your wrist. But I got to combine it to something. I have to learn how to read that. Why is that important? How do I share that with my doctor? And then as we start putting AI layers on it, teaching them how to prompt that to use it and bringing that back to us. So we have done a great job of a lot of individual technologies, electronic pill cases. But what we haven't done a great job is combining the technologies for the consumer and literally and transparently saying, one, this is how you use it. This is how they're going to collect the data. And this is why that's important, very transparently and not scary as it replies to you in a secure environment, because it's going to give us insight to improve your health. And I think globally, although it becomes more simple, the farther out to the village you go, I still think we have now that capability with Cell to reach an audience we haven't been able to before. And we have to search for ways to improve those outcomes because it's not only third world that's having trouble with women's health, maternal health. It's right here in the US. And some of that is instruction. And I think we have to combine that investment in technology with the investment in that education. I really do.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Meg. And again, thank you always for joining us here today. And thank you for joining us at the summit. We're looking forward to seeing you at New York City Digital Health Week 2023 in June. And I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend in Woodstock. Enjoy the wonderful weather.
Thanks, Stan. You too. Thank you, everyone.
And again, that's Meg Columbia Walsh from Amazon. And again, help support the lab and all the free content that we put together. I just dropped in the YouTube link to our YouTube channel. If you could subscribe to a YouTube channel, you not only see these videos like these drop, but you also help support our mission and providing the types of free content that we provide on an ongoing basis, and bringing more leaders like Meg to the program. And we're streaming live on YouTube, so you can also watch not only on Zoom but also on YouTube at the same time, and get people like Meg in stereo. And next up. Thanks, Meg. And so next up, we have HITLAB's own Kat Marriott, who is the Executive Director of Research and a Senior Research Scientist at the lab. And she's going to be joining, and with her today, we'll be joining Betsy Noor from WellBrain, a HITLAB technology company, someone who is a BTA winner. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But Kat, thanks for joining us today and looking forward to the session.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stan. And thank you, Betsy, for joining us. I just wanted to, first of all, re-congratulate you for WellBrain's BTA Challenge win. I believe it was just about a year ago, right?
Yeah. It was.
It was the spring of 22 that WellBrain submitted and was one of the winners of the BTA Challenge. So real quickly, tell us how that has been and what WellBrain has gotten out of it. How have you benefited, and how has that impacted WellBrain and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so it was about a year ago, and we were really excited to be able to present. And I think we got some excellent feedback. We were going through some transitions team-wise, and it really helped the team get re-energized on our mission related to chronic pain. I think that it made us think out of the box, and it gave us obviously exposure that we hadn't had. It was just a great experience, and it was my introduction to HITLAB, so that was exciting as well.
Excellent. So let's tell the audience a little bit about what WellBrain is and why it's important that we're talking about WellBrain and what WellBrain does, specifically as it relates to the mental health issues.
Yeah, so we're a digital health startup that focuses on chronic pain, and a lot of our competitors are focused on MSK, right? And so we are looking at all disease states, including women's health, right? Things like fibromyalgia, cancer care. It's not, we are not focused on just MSK. So we also know that 85% of people that suffer from chronic pain also have mental health challenges. So it's a big part of what we do. I like to use the analogy of keeping people in the guardrails, right? So we want people that suffer from chronic pain to have the tools, and their providers to have the tools to keep them within the guardrails. And I loved what Meg was talking about, because I think eventually utilizing AI will definitely play into that, right? Because the more data we can capture, the more we can predict. And again, we can try to keep people from moving out of the guardrails. So how we do it is we have over 20 clinically proven panels, patient-reported outcomes that result in an overall brain health score. Right. And those include things like anxiety, it includes level of pain, it includes medication management. And each one of those play into this brain health score. And that is something that a provider can prescribe automatically. And you can look longitudinally at it, so a provider and a patient can understand where they fit in their chronic pain journey. And I think the ultimate goal is to work to retrain the brain, right? To be able to manage pain differently, and really focus on medication management as part of that. To again have functioning. People that suffer from chronic pain to be able to function in whatever that looks like for them. So from that brain health score, we have a set of mindful meditations that are very tailored to whether it's sleep issues, pain issues, anxiety issues, that were all developed specifically for WellBrain by a monk. So those are available. And then from that, we also have movement. So we have virtual physical therapy. So a patient can say, I'm having arm pain, or I'm having whole body pain when it comes to something like fibromyalgia. And from that exercises are provided via email or text. And so, it's all virtual. And then we also have a behavioral health telepsych network to be able to focus on things like anxiety that can be a big factor, obviously, for somebody that has chronic pain. So we really try to look at whole person health, not to overuse that word, but I think it's really important. And our goal is to keep people functioning.
Excellent. Yes, I know personally how important addressing that mental health component of chronic pain is. Separate from my work at HITLAB, I also run a nonprofit organization associated with the opioid epidemic. And for chronic pain patients, it's unfortunate that too often most chronic pain patients are relying almost 100% on pharmaceutical options in order to address their chronic pain. And we know that there are so many more facets and aspects to chronic pain, and pharmaceutical options aren't necessarily addressing 100% of that. And really, pain is a phenomenon in the brain. It is rare, especially chronic pain. It is not, or it is rarely a phenomenon of an actual injury somewhere in the body. It is the perceived. So the mental health component is so critical. And it was wonderful getting to know what WellBrain is and working with you guys in order to understand how WellBrain is addressing that mental health component. So kudos to you.
Yeah, no, we are a mission-driven company, and there's no doubt about that. And it really is, it initiated with the founders, who are all chronic pain physicians, and their struggle with the opioid crisis, and the fact that, patients just wanted the meds and they knew there was a better way. And to your point, we really believe in the concept of retraining the brain to manage the pain. I kind of feel like Eliza Doolittle in that, but I think you get the point. Retraining the brain is really important, and it's a big part of what we try to do with the tool sets that we provide both physicians and patients.
Excellent. Well, real quickly, because we only have a few more minutes, as part of the BTA challenge, you guys worked with HITLAB in order to fulfill a small a research study, and through that study, we looked at your platform and we did a heuristic analysis. Can you tell us just a little bit about how that really benefited and what you took away from that research done with HITLAB?
Absolutely. So number one, first of all, thank you. It was a great experience for us. So, and a huge bonus. So one thing is that we walked away with a lot of positive feedback related to usability from our platform. And that was just great information and validation. And then secondarily, there were some excellent recommendations on engagement. And I think everybody knows in this digital space that engagement is critical, right? I don't care what we're doing, and especially with patients, right? And so what it brought to light is things that we needed to do to focus on related to engagement. So we've made some additions, we've added text, we've added surveys. And so it really gave us focus on sort of next steps when it came to the overall product roadmap. And, we're just forever thankful for that. Yeah, again, really enjoyed the process.
Well, wonderful. I sincerely appreciate that. And for any of those participants that are out there, I believe there's still time to apply to our next round of the BTA challenge, which will be coming up very, very soon. But for sure, consider applying. It's a great way to to not only to get exposure, but to get necessary and needed data for your organization in the next steps that you need to take. So thank you so much, Betsy. We really, truly appreciate your participation today. We'd love to see all of our BTA challenge winners really excelling and moving forward. And we really thoroughly have enjoyed working with you.
Excellent. Likewise. Thank you, Kat. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Stan.
No, thank you, Kat and Betsy. Well done, both of you. Appreciate it. And with that, just a reminder to our audience, we have 1 day left to apply for the BTA challenge. We have over 1,000 submissions right now. We're really excited to get everyone up and running and to seeing everyone's technology. So this is going to be the biggest and the best BTA challenge ever. And you'll be presenting virtually live on stage. We'll have you beamed into Columbia University's Learner Theater to present your technology in front of hundreds of live attendees and thousands of people joining us on YouTube and Zoom worldwide. So again, a lot of opportunity for a tremendous amount of lift for the platforms that you're building. Along with that, we're really happy to continue the conversation around women's health tech, and especially in this month of women's health and mental health. And our own Jerry Antomato is going to be interviewing Paula Sortopoulos today to talk more about this, particularly with her leadership as a venture partner at 5 AM Ventures. Paula, thank you for joining, and Jerry, thank you for leading this conversation.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for including me.
No, thanks so much, Stan, and really wonderful to have you on the program, Paula. We'd love to definitely hear a little bit about yourself, of course. If you could just give the audience a little bit of a background about your decades long experience in the healthcare world and all the different therapeutic areas you've been able to cover. I'm sure the audience would love to get a bit of an idea of where you've been and what you do now.
Sure. Great, Jerry. So Paul Soteropoulos, I've been in the biopharma industry for well over 30 years. I spent 2 of those decades at Genzyme, which was a large biotech company, bringing therapeutics to market. I started as an engineer, and I ultimately became a general manager of one of our global businesses. From there, I moved into more entrepreneurial companies. I spent some time at Moderna in its very early days, and then I launched and started a new company, Exceed Therapeutics, which I took public and got 2 rare disease drugs approved. And then from there, I went more into the venture side and started working with 5AM Ventures, started a new company, which I helped found and led initially for the first 20 months, and now I'm chairman of the board. So I spend a bit of time today doing multiple boards and then new venture creation of new companies. So most of my experience has been in the therapeutic space, bringing novel medicines to patients.
No, wonderful, wonderful, Paula. Thanks so much for giving the audience a little bit of background about yourself. If you do want to connect with Paula, of course, everybody in the audience, please do check out the chat. Ansley, I know, will be putting in some information about 5AM Ventures, as well as a LinkedIn to Paula, so you can connect with her post the program today. But we'd really love to hear, Paula, about the work that you've been doing as an active mentor and a coach for women, of course, in the Bio Boardroom Ready program, the Tamir Foundation for Next Generation Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of the time I spend today, in addition to new ventures, is really giving back. And I was very fortunate enough to have really significant mentors who guided me. And one of them was Henry Tamir, and that's the Tamir Foundation is named after. He was the former CEO, the late CEO of Genzyme. And frankly, was someone who believed more in me than I believed in myself. And I think if I didn't have such a mentor, I for sure would never have pushed myself to expand beyond the boundaries of what I expected and what I could do in this industry, especially becoming a CEO and running my own company and founding my own companies. It's just something that wasn't in my mindset originally, and that mentoring was absolutely key. So for me, I really want to give that back, and I don't only mentor women, but I disproportionately focus on women because of the fact that I look back, I never had a female mentor. There were things that I think I was going through that are unique to women, that it would have been great to have someone help guide me through that. So that's one reason. And the sheer fact is we don't have enough women in leadership roles, especially in the boardroom. That's the other the support group that I'm a mentor for, is the Women in Bio Boardroom, getting more women on boards, and one really helping to not just to have more women for the sake of having more women. Diversity is absolutely important, and the sheer number of diverse voices in a boardroom on a leadership team really changes the trajectory of success of a company, of a team. And so that's really a lot of why I think it's critical to increase the diversity in the boardroom. Again, not just women, but diversity in general. So that's a lot of the focus that I'm working on.
No, that's really, really wonderful, and really apt for the month this month, because it is also, as much as it is Women's Health and Mental Health Month, it is also Diversity Month too.
Yeah,
so that's really, really wonderful. So I'd love to start to get an idea from you with the title of this session being therapeutics and how therapeutics are influencing women's health. In your experience with, with all the different places that you've been and now being at 5AM Ventures, what have you seen in terms of therapeutics out there being used now to support women's health? And can you just speak to us on that?
Yeah, frankly, absolutely not enough. And it's one of the things that I'm actually focused on now with 5AM Ventures, personally, and the type of investments I would like to work on. I have spent all these decades in mainly rare diseases, large diseases rare disease and large diseases like cardiovascular disease. And there is just a scarcity of investment in specific diseases that affect women. Women make up obviously half the globe's population, but they make up 80% of healthcare decisions. And that has nothing to do with women's unique healthcare issues. They make up the majority of decisions. But if you look at the stats beyond, let's say, breast cancer, the amount of funding that goes into women's health is only 1% of research dollars. And that came from a McKinsey report. And these are diseases that uniquely affect women. And there's only about 2% of the overall development pipeline of preclinical products that are devoted to women. And I don't know if that's a complacency issue with regard to women's health, but and some of these diseases, I think people consider, well, it's just part of being a woman, but they're life altering. They impact the quality of life. There are things like, let's say, menopause, PCOS, endometriosis. They're significant quality of life diseases. They disrupt their ability to work. So therefore, you have a significant loss in productivity. And then, frankly, that exacerbates the growing mental health crisis, which is, also part of the topic here. So I will say it's vastly under invested in, and that's one of the reasons for me personally. I am working hard to see where can we make investments. I would say it's not easy. There are not enough companies that have been started to look at some of these areas, and I'm hoping that changes, because it also needs change at the academic level as well, at institutions, to really invest in these areas.
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely correct, especially with the, with a lot of the therapeutics that we've seen come through the various different women's health tech challenges and the women's health tech initiative that we currently run at HITLAB. And I think that's one of the reasons why we certainly started up to really start to shine a spotlight on not only the need for it, but also highlighting the entrepreneurs who are making a difference there as well. In terms of, you saying, there is definitely not enough sort of being done around the development for therapeutics around women's health. Are there specific areas of women's health that you've seen that you feel need the most support or attention in your experience? Yeah,
so I think as people think about women's health, most people think about it as reproductive health and maternal health. And I will say, in that area, there's still a significant need there too. I mean, we're not done with fertility, and there's so much more that can be improved. But I still think it's a small percent of research dollars goes there. But the other areas are things like that I mentioned before: the menopause, PCOS, endometriosis. But there's things like PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is also a mental health issue. It's not even recognized in many cases. But so these are places where folks are not investing money. But so these are unique to women. But then there's other diseases that I'm also looking at that are afflicting women disproportionately. So like in autoimmune diseases, think about multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's. They are not unique only to women. They're just proportionally afflicting women more. And so these also have a significant unmet need. So I think for me, the take home is we really have to think about women's health. It's not a niche market that deserves only, a small amount of investment dollars. There's really an enormous opportunity to improve the quality of life for women afflicted with many of these conditions. And that is just, I think, overall good from a standpoint of, not only the livelihoods of women and families, but positive effects in society with productivity and work and that sort of thing. But these areas are all underinvested in today.
No, absolutely. You definitely do shine a light on the current need and the need for support in these specific areas, Paul. So thanks so much. And you're definitely getting a lot of thanks from the audience as well in the chat for really bringing to light this information and this need and stuff. We are coming sort of to the end of the discussion, and I think we'd like to leave the audience with your insights on the importance now, I suppose, of connecting and empowering other women leaders such as yourself within life sciences, and the need to be able to give them that sort of platform.
Yeah, I mean, I said it a bit before, but I just think it's diversity, period. The end. We need in leadership roles. I think we need the diverse perspectives that can, not only be, let's say, at the highest levels, but even in the most highly functioning teams, you need the diversity of voice. And there just aren't enough women in these leadership positions. And we know the stats. I mean, it just drops off as you get higher and higher in organizations. But I do think we need to, for me, the reason to connect and empower women is to really, for them to say, well, yeah, I could do this, and to see that there are women that have been able to do this, and maybe help them through some of the challenges. I will give you an example. I am part of a group of women biotech CEOs. This just was only formed just organically a couple of years ago with a few women getting together. And it's about 150-ish women CEOs in biotech across the United States, it's actually a much bigger amount than it was when I was a CEO. My first time CEO, it was a handful. I had no one to reach out. And we did a little bit of a summit and got together. And the types of topics, I mean, we talked about all the things about managing investors in the boardroom like anybody else would, but there was interesting topics. So, for example, one woman CEO, she had a challenge to actually work with her board to try to find a solution for her to freeze her eggs, because if they wanted her to build this company in the way that they needed to build it, she had to take care of her own fertility concerns. So these are things a male CEO is not going to have to deal with. So I just give you that as an example that sometimes there's a support that's needed that's unique.
No, absolutely. No, that's really, really wonderful. And thanks so much for giving us that specific example. I'm sure there are hundreds more. And with that, we're at time, coming up nicely to the top of the hour. Paula, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time and effort to put this discussion together. And thanks so much for your contribution and your leadership in the women's health space, which I think just under 200 the attendees here could attest to the need for that leadership that's needed now in the healthcare space more than ever.
Right. Thank you, Jerry. Take care.
Thanks, Paula. And Stan, back to you.
No, thank you, Jerry. Great interview. Really appreciate it. And we are coming up at the top of the hour. We are actually at the top of the hour, and we are at almost 1,000 subscribers to the HITLAB YouTube channel. So support HITLAB and its free content generation and the work that we do to present the latest in evidence and digital health evidence that's out there. If you could, I just popped into the chat box, the HITLAB YouTube channel, subscribe and join that community as well. Again, we're at 993 subscribers. Would love to hit 1,000 subscribers during the program today. So if you have a minute, just subscribe and you'll have the latest YouTube videos dropped of all these great sessions that go on, again, for free onto our YouTube channel. And next up, we're going to continue talking about the mental health focus and talk about what's going on in maternal care and maternal mental health care. And with us is our own Zina Manji, a global fellow at HITLAB, who will go ahead and talk to one of the leaders in the women's health, mental health ecosystem. Zina, thank you for joining us today and handing over the virtual podium to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stan. Always a pleasure to be part of HITLAB. And Digital Health Focus is the title of our regular segment that we're running on HITLAB in the monthly symposia. So happy to be that moderator. And yeah, my background, I'm regulatory affairs and currently with Illum as head of North America regulatory affairs. So this month is the Maternal Mental Health Month. And this month, there was also an inaugural report card that was released, giving a lot of information about the state of the states in the United States. So I am so pleased to be joined by Kritika Parmeswaran, CEO at Vital Start. And I actually met Kritika on the HITLAB platform and also on the Breakthrough One platform. So a pitch for that for those of you who are interested. So Kritika, so glad to have you join me today, and a little bit about you and VitalStart.
Yes, it's absolutely an honor to be here. I think I've been associated with HITLAB and at their events and different initiatives that Stan and Jerry and others have been doing for so many years. So I'm really excited to be here and join this growing set of voices that are talking about women's health and mental health, the impacts of that. Hi, everyone. I'm Kritika Parmeshwaran. I'm a Wharton alum and the founder and CEO of VitalStart Health. At VitalStart Health, what we are doing is addressing this very key question. Everybody wants to hold the baby, but who holds the mom? And that's the question we're looking at through a preventative lens, starting from fertility, preconception, through pregnancy and postpartum. So Zina, I'd like to share a little bit more about some of the exciting things we're doing at VitalStart. And one of the key things is we are using virtual reality to provide the best possible care to empower both the practitioners, the clinicians, as well as the patients who are going to be using this platform. Our platform is live, and we've already launched at a couple of clinics and very excited to see where this can go.
Yeah, fantastic, Kritika. And as part of your work in that, what were your thoughts on the state of the state, so to speak, on maternal mental health?
Yeah, I mean, the first thought is, of course, this is dismal. This is not what you would expect for one of the richest and the wealthiest nations in the world spending $3 trillion in healthcare. But I think at the same time, just to put on that practical lens, it was expected as well, because we know what's happening on the ground here. And we know that there's a lot of work still remaining to be done. A lot of issues with access, a lot of issues with screening not being, ubiquitous, and also incentives. And for me, that incentive structure is the biggest that I feel we should, maybe shine some more light on, Zina, as we go through this. But certainly, through VitalStart, our aim is to disrupt this. It can take up to $19,000 per mother for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which is that maternal mental health we talk about, and can take up to 5 years, according to Mathematica. So we want to disrupt this through innovation, through that human in the loop, through bringing something that's accessible and equitable for all. Yeah,
absolutely. And you mentioned some key points here about, the preventative aspect. And incentives. So what are your thoughts on barriers or the opportunity to enable the disruption you're mentioning?
Yeah, I think the previous speaker, Paula, was mentioning about this being an underinvested area. I mean, you can't repeat that enough. There certainly needs to be much more venture dollars coming into this area, which has such a pervasive impact, multi-generational impact. And at the same time, this not only should be happening from the industry, from employers and others, but has to come from CMS itself through reimbursements. And I think that is where it all begins. Because we know in our healthcare system, we're really dependent on the payer structure, we're dependent on reimbursements to drive the go-to-market strategy or drive that commercialization. And, as part of that, we have the FDA pathways to go through to get that reimbursement potentially. But these are the different aspects of the ecosystem that one has to keep in mind. And I think, Zina, you brought this up in a very nice way, and we can certainly unpack this further.
Yeah, and I think what's really compelling here is where is the right point of interface with the patient or the woman who is maybe is even preconception, I think in our earlier conversations we were having. So really upstream. And also there are trends that are in terms of incentives and support that are very different in other countries, it seems. So there are specific aspects that I think are needed, as we discussed, as came through in the state report, to actually support the mother or the to-be mother through the process of having recognized care and what's really needed. And how do you look at those gaps and how to address those gaps to really build that value-based care model that, as you say, there's an incentives barrier, which needs to be, kind of more in a ubiquitous platform. How do you close those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, what a great question, Zina. This is something that keeps me up at night, and I'm sure many other CEOs in the space are thinking of similar things. So the first thing for us at Vital Start, it is our vision, to be able to deliver joy. We recently rebranded to bring that about as well. And so we are looking at this journey from a lens of someone who's been through this. I've been through this myself, come face to face with that stigma, the anxiety and the discrepancies in the healthcare system. So it's very clear it's a very vulnerable journey. So let's just accept that. This is not something, even if you're the most educated person, you've read everything, so many surprises that come at you through this journey. It's absolutely unpredictable. So it's a vulnerable journey. And we feel that it's really important, along with that self-guided support, along with AI, there should be the human encounter. There should be a practitioner encounter, whether it's a licensed professional or maybe someone who's a perinatal mental health expert. So with that, now let's unpack that incentive structure. So if you look at the providers right now, when I speak to providers as part of our customer discovery, the biggest thing that we get is we do not want to be in network with payers because they don't feel here is someone who's got a PhD and they're not getting compensated enough. So they literally have to negotiate their rate based on their credentials and their experience with every payer. And then that happens with every state. So it gets really complicated. So most people want to be out of network. So that's one issue. The other thing I notice is that, yes, we want to move towards value-based care, but there's not much incentives for measuring care at all. Like we have the Fitbit, we have, the Apple Watch, we have other things that provide us physical health information, physiologic data, maybe even through computer vision now, but we're not seeing that same thing in behavioral health. So I think there has to be incentives to track that behavioral progression. Some of that is coming with the remote therapeutic monitoring codes, but that opens up another can of worms. It's not enough for you to monitor. You still have to go through an FDA pathway, which adds to more risks for a startup or need for more money, which we know that investment is an issue. So there is that piece here of bringing measurable behavioral health, which we feel very strongly about. We have that embedded in our platform. It's an evidence-based platform that provides care, tracking that longitudinal scorecard for a client going through this. So that is one aspect, the measurable part. And I think the third aspect is equity. We know really well that, care is not equal. And a lot of this, if you look at the social vulnerability index, is based on your zip code. So how do you get that best care, adapt, be agile to providing different sorts of care? And we began with, mobile VR, low cost VR with that lens of being completely equitable. And now we are seeing that there are some areas like reproductive health where that may not be the case. And so we now have both options, the high-end option, the low-end option, depending on where you are and what you need in your journey, so that we can remove all these barriers that we see, whether it's access, whether it's, the costs, whether it is the time. How can we get to you? How can we provide that best care and impact the families? We have this vision of impacting 1 million families. How do you get to that? I think all of that fits into that go-to-market strategy. But of course, the commercialization piece is the biggest. And that's where this is the last part that I want to bring up, is that reimbursements. So the current reimbursements that are there is screening. That's also not there in all the 50 states, but it's at least something the CMS has, and you can decide to do some of that with the payers that support it. So that's a great thing. The other thing that we have, of course, is psychotherapy codes, health behavior intervention codes. So those are good. We could use that. But there are still some newer codes like virtual reality. We do have codes for it now, but these are tracking codes and not completely baked in with every payer. So we are, there's still that route to go through, and then remote therapeutic monitoring. These are the codes that I have studied, and I'm noticing that these are things one can use to drive that impact. And I'm being very open about this because I know probably there are many others here who are on the same journey as me. And I think it's fine. This is such a huge problem. 1 million women going through this each year. We all have to work in this together. And, there are phenomenal startups looking at this from different aspects, whether one is through community and peer support, one is through AI, one is, like us through virtual reality, and there are some with social support. So I think we need all of this. We need a village to get this done, Zina. But although it is challenging, I'm still very optimistic that we're going to get over this. There is so much of that awareness and emphasis right now. I think the timing is just right.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, it's a long journey for sure, but the awareness, the acknowledgement, the recognition seems to be building. And I think, you spoke about incentives, and, OBGYNs are actually not trained to do the screening you were mentioning, to kind of bring up in the early stage, catch upstream, or even in the preconception stage. And so what's really clear here and what you're bringing through is that technology does play a role here in actually enabling the data, enabling evidence. But we also have to look at the dynamics at play here in terms of what are the payers looking at, and consistency of the type of data that the payers are willing to support, so that it's not just having the technology, it's having what is that data going to enable to actually provide that care. Because then you mentioned the barrier and the access issue. Well, if you don't have the support to get into the health economics of providers and clinicians actually being able to do proper care, is not going to get to the delivery of those who need it. And actually, as you were saying in an earlier conversation about moving the needle. So would you agree with that kind of as an overall summary, that these are really critical dynamics, and including policy, regulatory, all comes together, but you really got to take it piece by piece. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah. So that's another great question, Zina. Around 10 days ago, I was at the NIH. We had a maternal innovation workshop there. And that was exactly what we did there. There was a payer panel, there was an investor panel, there were, innovators also pitching their solutions. And it was clear that the payers still felt that maybe there's not enough pertinent data that's very specific. So I agree with you, Zina. I think a lot of this is going to come down to payers or self-insured employers who are going to have to pay for all of this downstream. So that's the note. I think there is work to be done, but we at least now see the path forward.
Not to mention advocacy and women, as we're talking about in this symposia, is so important both for women's and mental health. So thank you so much, Kirtika. Stan, over to you.
Wonderful panel. Thank you very much. Great interview, Zina, and really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Kirtika, and really appreciate you joining us. And again, I think it's important. Number one, let's celebrate. We hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, everybody. On the May 25 program, 525, we have hit 1,000. So well done, HITLAB community. We're officially past the 1K mark, and looking forward to continuing to grow on that level. And it really does. I'm not even sure what it does, frankly. I'm not that fluent in social media world, but I do know it's important to pass 1,000 subscribers and different levels of subscribers. So again, thank you all for helping us out and keeping this content free, and continuing to being able to provide you with the latest in digital health evidence and the adoption of technologies, so that you can all make better decisions on what to buy, where to invest, and what to build, and how to build it to make sure that it's going to resonate and really help support patient populations around the world. And now, in particularly this month, in women's health and mental health. And a part of that mission is Breakthrough One. And again, to support the lab and our mission, we have these communities that strike up and include a number of different benefits. And we have teams of people at the lab supporting these products, but this ability to accelerate and amplify your brand and amplify your impact in healthcare through not only insights and expertise and shared perspectives, and a number of virtual and in-person meetings, but also with connectivity programs and being able to curate your connectivity to the ecosystem, helping present you with brand amplification opportunities, whether it's talks, speeches, papers, etc. And you also get transcripts. You get access to the HITLAB Hub, our platform on hitlab.org, and it also allows you to help improve your overall understanding of what's going on and improve your empathy through shared context. So again, just click on the QR code that Ainsley's provided in the bottom right-hand corner to learn more about the Breakthrough One program, and hoping you can join us, not only virtually, but also in person in a number of events that we do around New York, Chicago, Miami, San Diego, all over the country, and next year, all over the world as well. So with that, here's hour number 2 and the layup that we have in the program that we have coming up. Leading off hour number 2 is going to be our own Jerry Antomato, talking with, again, just a tremendous partner that we have within the AARP ecosystem, coming out of their innovation labs that they have in Tricia, San Diego. So really looking forward to this conversation. Handing it over to you, Jerry.
No, cheers, Stan. Thanks so much. Really, really awesome support from everybody in the community for helping us get to that important milestone on YouTube. So thank you, everybody who has subscribed and liked and has benefited from some of the content that we've been able to produce online. It's my pleasure to be joined by Tricia San Diego from AARP today. A lot of our community will know about the HTech Collaborative, who we partnered with for a recent pitch competition. But Tricia, you're new to HITLAB in terms of being on the program, so it's lovely to have you on. We'd love to hear a little bit about yourself. So if you give us a 2-minute background on yourself, I'm sure the audience would love to hear about what you've done and what you do currently at AARP.
Sure, Jerry. Hopefully you can hear me now. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this session. Tricia San Diego. I work on AARP's Community, State, and National Program Department within the Family Caregiving and Health team. And what we do there is we, equip family caregivers with the resources that they need to help provide care for a loved one. And what I do is mostly focused on health education, health promotion, health communication. My background is mostly in public health, over 20 years in various industries and backgrounds. But I always go back to, the social mission of helping individuals and communities with their health. And we know that family caregivers, which I'll take a step back and sort of define who that is, someone who's caring for a loved one at home, not sort of for your paid job or your daytime job, but someone who is taking care of a spouse, a neighbor, a family member, a relative, an aging parent. There's 53 million family caregivers in the US, according to AARP's Caregiving 2020 data. And we know that number has increased since the pandemic, of which we know about 48 million are caring for older loved ones and adults. And so we really want to help family caregivers who are the backbone of our long-term care system.
That's really wonderful, Tricia. Thanks so much, and thanks for giving us some of those stats that I wasn't really aware of. And it certainly makes sense, especially with the aging population of not only the US but of the world, that we would start to sort of increase the number of caregivers that we need for the population and stuff. To that end, we often, when we hear about AARP, we don't normally think about the caregiving side of the equation. We focus more on the actual folks who are aging. But we'd love to hear about the work that you do around understanding the physical and mental impact, especially on women, with it being Women's Health Month. Who are those caregivers, especially caring for the aging population, as you spoke?
Sure. Yeah. Well, happy Women's Health Month. It's also Older Americans Month in May, and also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month as well. So whatever you're celebrating this month, I think it is an important time to recognize family caregivers, especially women. AARP's mission is to empower people to choose how they live as they age, and you're aging at any age. And so caregivers who are sort of an exception to our normal target audience in the sense that they are not just the 50 plus population. Caregivers come from every generation, from every walk of life, multicultural backgrounds. There's all different types of caregivers. So every caregiving journey is different. And if you've met one caregiver, you've met one caregiver, because all the different sort of permutations of the disease condition that they may be helping assist a loved one with, who the loved one is in terms of their relationship. Are they long distance? Are they close? And so there are a lot of family caregivers in the US who need help, and they're all different types. There's no one size fits all solution to help caregivers, but I think we can really help provide the framework. But there certainly is a disproportionate impact of caregiving challenges on women. Women do tend to are more likely to be caregivers than men. 6 in 10 tend to be women. Demographics are changing, though. We see more and more men in the caregiving role. They're, as like I mentioned, diverse as they come, and all types of generations. You know, we have actually more than 50% of the family caregivers are actually younger than the age of 50. So this isn't just an older, you know, person, an issue for people in their 50s or 60s. 25% are millennials, and you know, even as young as Gen Z, we see 6% sort of stepping up into that role. And so we have a lot of different demographic stats to share, but we know that women tend to kind of take on that burden a little bit more, and the challenges. There's certainly rewards and joys to caregiving, but we know the mental load, the physical toll can take a big impact, because many women will report higher stress rates when they are in a caregiving role. I'm someone who identifies in the sandwich generation of caregiving. I'm taking care of multiple generations, my young children as well as my aging parents. And I actually call it the panini generation, because it's not just a regular sandwich, like you're really squished. And if you're also managing a full-time job or a daytime job on top of that, you're doing 2 jobs, one most likely paid, and then the other maybe secret. Maybe your workplace doesn't know, but that's most likely to be unpaid. So all that stress can lead to both physical impacts as well as mental and social emotional impacts that can be detrimental to a woman's health. We have things like insomnia, anxiety, depression, weight gain, weight loss, just the inability to sort of be able to balance all the things that you're juggling up in the air is a lot to handle at once, and it does take that physical toll. Women will tend to delay any kind of preventive screenings or usual annual checkups of their own health care while they're caring for a loved one, and that can have impacts in terms of not really taking advantage of the benefits of primary and secondary prevention. You have less time to exercise potentially. You have less time for yourself to plan to eat right and do all those kinds of things. So there certainly is that physical and mental and socio-emotional health impacts. We know people tend to feel more lonely and isolated when they're caregivers, because they're oftentimes just putting it all on their own shoulders.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You bring up some really, really good points, you know, about all the different things that can really impact any caregivers, and no less, of course, the women that we want to sort of focus this specific conversation on, and the fact that you are juggling all of these different priorities in your life, as well as having to care for a loved one too. Could you speak a little bit more on that in terms of how women can prioritize both their mental and their physical health, as well as the health of the person that they're caring for, among all these other priorities that they have to juggle?
Absolutely. I think the first step is to give yourself grace. I think we take on a lot as women in the household and in your own sort of family circle, as well as in the workplace. And I think you need to give yourself grace and take a step back and assess your own self-care needs. There's feelings of guilt. There's a lot of high emotional state that's happening sometimes when you're thrown into a caregiving situation, and you usually just sort of need to take a step back and get your bearings. I think one of the first things that you can do is preparedness and making a plan. That's self-care in lots of ways. It's not your typical sort of spa day or meditation or yoga or walk in the park, which are all great things to do for yourself that don't take a lot of time. But I think making a plan for your caregiving role and your situation, and even a plan for yourself, so that you don't perpetuate sort of the cycle of unpreparedness and pass it on to the next generation for who's caring for you when you become a care recipient. I think that's one thing that you can really do to feel more self-efficacy, more sort of confidence in the caregiving role, and help you build that capacity to be able to juggle when you know that there's something that you can refer to in terms of steps. And ARP has lots of resources in terms of, making that plan, regardless of where you are in your caregiving journey. You can be not a caregiver yet and in true preparedness mode, or you can be in the throes of caregiving and still need that time to take a beat, take a step back and get your bearings. What are things that you need to improve and work on? So I think planning is really critical. I think giving yourself grace, of course, allowing yourself time to, do things for yourself, like your health checkups, like your annual preventive screenings. If something is bothering you health-wise, make sure to go check it out. And seeking counseling or therapy, if that's something that you can access. Certainly having someone to talk to describe your situations, to manage some of the maybe difficult relationships that you might have while you're balancing caregiving and all the other balls that you have in the air. I think those are really, really good things that you can focus on. Just remember the sort of airplane oxygen mask analogy. They always say, put that oxygen mask on yourself before you do put it on others, because you're not really that helpful if you're not sort of giving your all, if you're not sort of able to give your all to yourself first before you help others.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And some virtual round of applause from the audience there in terms of that specific analogy. Some really, really great advice as well to just shy of 170 or so folks that are currently watching and listening live, to which I'm sure a really good proportion of them it really does apply to and resonate with. But just as we round off here, before we go on to the next segment, Tricia, and thank you so much for your time. Are there any specific resources? I know you spoke about therapy just now, and things to kind of have caregivers get things off their chest and talk things through. Are there any other resources out there, especially with things that AARP maybe is able to offer that is out there for women in this current situation?
Of course, we have tons of articles and support on arp.org/caregiving. I encourage everyone to go there, but look at your social network. Who are the other caregivers? They're oftentimes sort of the number one resource that caregivers can turn to and provide support. There's probably local support groups in your organization. Look at nonprofit disease management groups to see what they have available. I think we saw something come up in the chat for that. And look at your employer. If you're a working family caregiver, your employer likely has benefits to support you, to help you balance your job as well as caregiving. And they're often underutilized and people don't know their caregiving applicability, but certainly leverage all the things that are at your fingertips and don't try to take it all on your own. Give yourself grace. Delegation is really key. And that ability to, take a beat and get your bearings and, do the best that you can, but just make sure that you prioritize yourself.
That's really, really wonderful. Tricia, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you for giving up the time to come and talk to the audience, give some really great advice. We'd love to have you back on the program at some point to talk on some of the other future symposia.
Thank you.
No, of course. And on that note of Stan also talking about the YouTube channel, if you did miss the previous challenge that we did with the AARP Age Tech Collaborative, you can watch it in the archive there if you either want to review it or if you want to watch it because you missed it. But Stan, back to you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jerry. Great interview, and again, just tremendous opportunities to collaborate and see all the good work that is happening within the ecosystem there. Tremendous. Everything that AARP does is just first class, and we really enjoy working with them and certainly making sure that everything that they're doing is spot on as well. So next up, we have a digital health leader who's been a digital health leader for a long time and is really been around the ecosystem and understands it as well as anyone. And She heads up digital transformation for Novo Nordisk US, and we've had the incredible honor to be working with her. She's a member of the Women's Health Tech Initiative Board, and she's led a number of major digital initiatives across diabetes and certainly digital health and healthcare in general around the US for nearly 2 decades now. Amy, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, and it is always great to see you, Stan. So thanks for the opportunity to chat today.
It's fantastic, and really appreciate your shared perspective as well, and your just the tremendous expertise that you bring to the ecosystem. For the audience that doesn't know who you are, and again, I would recommend everyone reach out and connect with Amy. You'll see her LinkedIn pop into the chat box in a minute here. But if you could just let folks know what do you do, and talk a little bit about your role in Novo.
Sure, thank you. So Amy West, I've been in the pharma industry for over 25 years, primarily in the commercial space across a number of therapeutic areas, including diabetes and metabolic disease, neuroscience, and men's and women's health, as well as others, all pretty much with a heavy focus on customer engagement and experience. I've been with Novo Nordisk the past 14 years, where I'm currently leading our US digital transformation and innovation team. It's in essence an internal incubator. We have a lab called the APIS Lab, where we're focused on long-term and future needs related to healthcare and how can we transform how people experience healthcare through disruptive innovation, which could be digital technology or data, but it also could be a low-tech, high-tech intervention. Low-tech, high-touch intervention, because it's all, I guess it's sort of the big innovation idea. But our starting point with everything that we do is the customer's problem to solve. We really strive to put ourselves in their shoes and understand their problems and root cause pain points that are preventing them from having a good health outcome. And then we test different potential solutions through our agile lab experimentation framework to identify these novel solutions. Again, could be technology or could be a high touch intervention that will address those pain points and deliver the shared value for the individual as well as the business. And on a personal note, I am very passionate about the patient side of the healthcare equation, and in particular, women's health, because I am a woman and I, along with many of my family and friends, are women. And like so many of us, I am the chief medical officer of my own family and also that of my aging parents. So it's important that my general and mental health are optimized so that I can ensure theirs is as well. And I think it's just critically important that we innovate in this space in women's health so that we can ensure future generations will live healthier and better lives when we keep ourselves healthy.
Fantastic, and just tremendous in terms of what you heard Tricia San Diego talk about, the panini generation. It's not just a sandwich generation, it's actually a panini generation, because we're getting squished between taking care of our kids and taking care of our parents. And it sounds like that's what you do within your family as well.
I'm actually at my mom's house right now. I came down yesterday, and she's 86 and doing great, but she has some health issues. And again, I think part of being an aging individual as well as being a woman, she needs help with intervention and support. And so that's actually what I'm going to be here doing over the course of the next week or so.
Good for you. That's fantastic. And talk a little bit about your role in Women's Health Tech Initiative and being on the board there, and how that's helped you frame perspectives and connect with folks like Tricia San Diego and AARP Innovation Lab, things like that. And tell the audience a little bit about what that means to you and how that's helped you.
Sure. So I have to say it's been a sincere pleasure to be a part of this really smart and dedicated group of people and leaders that are advising in such a necessary and trailblazing initiative. So kudos to you all at the HITLAB, as well as all my colleagues on the board. It's really been great. And we are a group of leaders coming from different areas of healthcare. We come together on a quarterly basis to share our different perspectives on how we can support the HITLAB Women's Health Tech Vision, which is for women everywhere to live longer, healthier lives through innovative healthcare technology. And so we come together to focus on how can we accelerate the awareness and connection of entrepreneurs in the women's health tech area at different stages of maturity with investors and other stakeholders in the space at a global level, so that they can test and advance and potentially scale, these viable novel offerings that are going to make a huge difference in the world and deliver on the mission of the organization. And on a personal level, as being a part of this advisory board, I really appreciate getting to meet and network with others in the industry to understand their point of view and their approach to problem solving. Because what I do is all about problem solving. How do we identify and how do we solve for it? And let's take off, where we sit out of the equation. Let's understand who we're trying to serve and what their root cause pain point is in the healthcare space. And it's been really interesting to listen to the different approaches and considerations. But in some ways, more than anything else, it's having that empathetic and supportive sounding board, because driving change in this space is really hard. So it's nice to have others who understand the challenges as well as the opportunities and have the vision that others in your everyday world might not have or be able to do. So it really is refreshing and reinforcing of the work that we're looking to do.
That's great. And part of that, you mentioned that the need for being able to understand and certainly have more awareness about what's going on in the ecosystem and across the ecosystem. And when it comes to women's health and mental health specifically, why is it important to create awareness in these topics from what you've seen? And as much as everyone talks about these topics and they are important, it seems like we need to create even more awareness. Like we're as much as we do talk about it, we're not talking about it enough. And why is it that it's important to talk about it more and raise awareness more?
Sure. I think through this forum, I'm sure that we're all aware that historically we have a health equity issue when it comes to women. And women and girls, are often encountering a lot of barriers to accessing adequate health care, which puts women at risk of well-being. And there are many examples we can look at, but just looking at rural versus urban living, women in rural areas tend to have worse outcomes. The healthcare professionals are more scarce there, which leads to a greater number of women being untreated or undiagnosed. Oftentimes, statistically, women in rural areas are underinsured. They have limited financial resources, and again, have less access to even not just general, but specialized care. So these disparities, continue to exist despite, as you said, Stan, there's a lot of awareness going on, but, and there's a lot of mitigating factors as, public awareness initiatives and projects, but more needs to be done. The conversation needs to be kept open. And this is also where things like digital and technology and femtech are really important, because they're going to provide a means and modality to be able to deliver that easier, more efficient access in the example of these rural areas, to create more health equity and reduce, undue burden on the healthcare system, and help people have a better quality of life when they've been in situations where they haven't been able to access or get the diagnosis that they need. And again, ultimately reduce that gender and even race disparity that we have that is currently plaguing our healthcare system.
Yeah, and that's certainly it's just extraordinary to see what the gaps are right now, and everyone's aware of the U.S. rank right now in maternal care, and in 38th, and these sorts of things are just unbelievable. Even in this day and age, and when it comes to being not just aware of an issue, but taking that next step and becoming an advocate for women's health. Why is that important, and what do you recommend people do in getting involved in that level?
There are a lot of things you can do depending on your sort of area of interest or focus. If you're looking to invest in femtech, there are a lot of venture funds that are available out there to look at and invest in or participate in. I think it's a good starting point to get to know the landscape. There are a lot of good sources out there. I think what HITLAB has available is a really good resource to look into. I also personally like Rock Health as a source of benchmarking and landscape analysis. They have a heavy focus in women's health as well. Get to know who the players are, what the opportunities are, reach out. You reach out, they will get back to you. And then there's also things you can do, like if you're interested in public policy, there are a lot of advocacy groups out there. You can simply do a Google search. There's a great way to do that. I'm a big proponent of act locally. Again, thinking about the problem solving, it's about get to know what's going on in your community. Where are the gaps and disparities and how can you get involved there? There are a lot of volunteer efforts or opportunities. There are a lot of ways to kind of understand, again, there could be problems, but what are the root cause problems? And the way to do that is really embed yourself and really take action. And so I think that's another great way to sort of get involved and start to see how you can be, play a role in being a solution, for the challenges out there. And of course, there are, obviously a lot of active players in this space that you can follow or join or become a part of. I've actually recently connected with and engaged with a small startup called Ada Rose, ADAROSE, which is all about a lot of health and mental wellness for very busy people. It isn't just for women. They do have specialized resources for women. There's some great blogs out there, Live Happy, paying attention to those and getting involved there. And then just the general social listening, listening to what's the word on social media and who's saying what and what's the tone and tenor of the different conversations, just to kind of keep yourself on the pulse of the themes that are out there and the challenges. And that also goes to support insight into understanding the root cause pain points.
That's amazing. Any parting thoughts, Amy? I mean, you're just a wealth of information for our audience and really appreciate everything that you're bringing to the community. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, just to say, this is such an exciting space and it's really nice to see a focus on women's health. I'm feeling a lot of pain these days, just, dealing with some things with my mom, who's just an amazing person. And I hate to see her have to struggle with the system. And I think it's also a really interesting example of someone who is not a digital native and is not comfortable with technology. We have to really embrace these solutions that might be technologically fed, but the actual engagement with the individual is a very high touch type of human approach. So we can't lose sight of the human interaction in light of the digital and technology and data and all the shiny objects that go with that. So we just have to remember we're human beings at the end of the day, and a lot of people want to still be connected in that way. So just keep that in mind.
That's fantastic. Well, Amy, thank you very much for joining us today. Wonderful seeing you again. Looking forward to seeing you at the end of June at Columbia.
Can't wait. Take it easy. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Again, just a tremendous opportunity to hear from one of the national leaders in digital health and certainly digital transformation. It's Amy West, head of digital transformation for Novo Nordisk US. And we're going from, really talking about what she's been doing in terms of leading the women's health tech initiative at HITLAB. If you are interested in getting more information about that, just click on the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. And one of our folks, the board manager from Women's Health Tech Initiative, will get in touch with you and provide more information on how to get involved as either a board member or a mentor or a general member, and really help expand the community around building evidence and building technologies for helping women in the US and around the world today. And so with that, we are really lucky to have another panel to discuss how new standards in mental health care are being pioneered, particularly with this focus on women's health. And very excited to introduce the moderator for the panel, Howard Rosen, a fellow at HITLAB. Howard, thank you very much for joining us today and leading this panel, and we'll hand the virtual podium over to you.
Well, it's great. Thank you very much, Stan. Again, I'm looking forward to it. Actually honored to be involved at this particular topic. We have all of 15 minutes as the standard, so I want to jump into it all very quickly. Just my quick background, I'm CEO of Nova Insights, involving consulting in really health tech innovation and strategy, and what I call humanizing digital transformation. Before that, I was a dreaded vendor, having invented a communication platform for providers and patients. And one of the areas we dealt with a lot was actually in women's health, particularly in the Veterans Administration, dealing with women's health and maternal health. So I have a particular interest in this area. So really excited to hear everyone's thoughts. So we're honored to have with us is Michelle Hoy, who is the Senior Vice President of Clinical Operations at Lips Health, and Chris Lee, who's the Technology Strategy Director for Elevance Health. So very quickly, Michelle and Chris, why don't you introduce yourselves and we'll jump into it. So Michelle, why don't you go first?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. As you just heard my name and title, I'm a mental health therapist and a substance use disorder therapist by training with many years of experience. I've also been a leader executive within specialty behavioral health provider and integrated care organizations, and have been with Ellipsis for about a year now, and I'm very excited about the work we're doing.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. Thanks, Michelle. Chris?
Hi, everyone. Honored to be here with you today. I'm Christopher Lee. I'm a technology strategy director at Elevance Health, which is a new name for Anthem. Prior to this, I've worked in various provider organizations as well as health IT startups. At one point in time, I thought of getting a PhD in clinical psychology and going down that path, but life takes you in unexpected directions. Certainly, mental health is still a passion of mine. So honored to be here.
That's fantastic, Chris. Thanks so much. So Michelle, let's start with you. So what is it you're doing at Lips Health, and particularly in the mental health area, and obviously dealing with the topic of pioneering the change of the standards, because it is evolving quickly?
Yes, at Ellipsis Health, we are using natural voice samples and deep machine learning artificial intelligence algorithms to identify depression and anxiety symptoms and the severity of those symptoms. We really believe, and we know through lots of research and data, that mental health problems are on the rise in our country and quite frankly around the world. We know that it takes today way longer than anyone would like to identify and then treat depression and anxiety. People really suffer with these diseases, and it affects their overall health as well as their productivity at work, or their ability to be a really present mother or father, or sister, brother, husband, wife. It can really debilitate people in their entire life. So the sooner we can identify people and screen them and get them into treatment, we know will be better for everyone. And so we're trying to think about how we really equalize the playing field with physical health and mental health. When you go to a doctor, you get lots of physical health screenings, a blood pressure, a weight, all these basic things that give you a score, a data point. And that doesn't really exist for mental health right now. So really pioneering and thinking about a standard screening that, and a vital sign that makes it common and less stigmatizing, that every time you see a doctor or are talking to your insurance company or dealing with your health, that we are getting a glimpse into whether you might have one of these common conditions and can really start a pathway to help people.
That's really cool. And stigma is such a big issue in the area of mental health. Again, it's the work that we've done. It's just amazing, and particularly in the military. It's a big issue area, particularly in the military, and a lot of reticence to talk about it. So there's obviously a lot more to dig down there. But first, I want to just jump over to Chris. And obviously, we know mental health is an important area, but what particularly do you see as why it is so crucial to focus in on that area?
Yeah, I think first I would want to echo Michelle's point about the rising prevalence and incidence of mental health conditions, especially since the pandemic, since the economic downturns, uncertainty. But certainly it's not just something that has risen the past couple of years. I think there's just more conversation. It's becoming less stigmatized. So people are talking about it in terms of mental wellness, mental well-being, instead of purely, depression, anxiety, or even more severe psychiatric disorders, right? Now, I think it is a rising issue, especially among kids. There was a recent U.S. Surgeon General advisory around the impact of social media on preteens, teenagers. We know that people, especially teenagers and young adults nowadays, are connected to their devices throughout the day. I think there's some statistics around checking it, 100 times or more a day, right? You're being constantly glued to this metronomic dose of negative news and comparison on social media with others, and all of this stuff that really affects one's self-esteem, one's vision and hope or lack thereof for their future. So yeah, I think at a societal level, those, we do see that rising prevalence in mental issues and incidents. Now, on a more personal level, I myself have had friends and loved ones who have dealt with severe depression. I have lost somebody to suicide. I know many people who have gone through severe bouts of anxiety, whether it is general anxiety or it's, because of grief or something specific in their life. And I would bet that most of the audience here, you probably have known somebody, perhaps yourself, who have wrestled with mental issues as well. And if you don't, you're probably not paying enough attention.
Interesting insight, because there's no question the prevalence is considerably larger than I think even the statistics are telling us. But yeah, it was really interesting when the Surgeon General came out yesterday with that warning about social media tied to that. It's going to be very interesting to follow that effect it has as it echoes through the system itself. But again, and putting all those pieces together, and Michelle, couldn't help but notice the slogan for Ellipse is now, or has been, pioneering a new standard in mental health care by harnessing the unique power of human voice and AI. You sort of talked about that earlier, but really, what is that new standard? Like how, obviously AIs, everyone knows about AI. We're all experts now in the past 3 months since ChatGPT came out. But what is that standard you really are zeroing in on, and that value proposition?
Yeah, the standard for us is really, again, that equalization of universal screening for mental health, not when we happen to think about a PHQ 8 or 2 or 9 screening. We also know that those forms of screening are laden with problems. They are often administered incorrectly. We know we have chronic under and over reporters. There are cultural and educational factors that can affect a person's responses. And we really believe that the sooner we can identify people who are struggling and get them some help, whether it be therapy or mindfulness skills and online or in asynchronous tools, the better off we and our world is going to be. People really do struggle with these things, and breaking down those stigmas and making it a common touch point that people aren't afraid to talk about, aren't afraid to know a score, can talk about. We all know what a healthy blood pressure is. Let's know what a healthy depression and anxiety score looks like. And if you're elevated, it's okay. Here's the resources to manage that. Just like when you have high blood pressure, we don't blame people. We don't judge them. We give them the resources to get better. So that's the kind of standard we're looking for, which is to elevate this, destigmatize it, and make it universal in terms of screening.
That's actually great perspective in terms of just, by phrasing it that way, we know our blood pressure, why not just that, the mental health scores, and just it's part of every day. We all live with that. That's really kind of cool.
It would be wonderful if we all had that.
Yeah. Well, let's start it. Let's see what we can do. So, Chris, in terms of obviously talking about where mental health is today, the tools, and obviously some of the standards as Michelle articulated, and where do you see it? So now where do you see it all going? Like we got it today, and again, as I said, we're all AI experts, but where do you see it going tomorrow and the next day?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I would distill it down to two things. Now, the first, we've been talking about it, mental health versus physical or medical side of services, right? And there's been a lot of talk and action in integrating behavioral health into medical settings, especially into primary care settings, so that you can identify those issues that may affect one's well-being, whether it is mental or physical. I think a lot of the conversation, however, has still been stuck in how does mental health or issues, how does that affect one's ability to, let's say, be adherent to their medication or treatment plans? Is still very focused on the physical health. I think where it's going is really treating mental health as its own thing, but in it really truly integrating it into it, and not just being secondary to the medical services side. And the second point I want to focus on is really, you can think of it as triage, getting the right level of support for the right individual. As we know, there are just not enough clinicians, mental health clinicians, therapists, psychologists in the world, right? Even with all of these startups that are marketplace based, they're just taking the same physicians and moving them back and forth. The supply is very much limited. But not everybody needs to see a psychiatrist. Not everybody needs to see a nurse practitioner or a psychologist or even a LCSW or an MFT, right? There are people who just need some level of peer support, non-professional or quasi-professional mid-levels. And I think having the right level of support for the right individual is where we need to get to in order if we want to treat the population as a whole and not simply people who have the best insurance or can pay out of pocket.
So really, what we're talking about is precision medicine and mental health for each individual, so each treated by their own standards in terms of what their particular needs are, which is makes so much sense. And of course, there's so much more I'd love to unpack, but looking at the clock, we're running down quickly. But I really want to have what are you sort of, and Stan had asked in the previous session, but for each of you, very quickly, sort of your parting thoughts in terms of just this is where do you, to me, it's like, what do you see as the biggest issue that you think actually will be solved, and that you're most excited about in solving? How about that?
Well, I'll quickly say, I just really appreciate and love what Chris just said, which is that not everyone needs formal intervention or licensed practitioner interventions. There's so many opportunities. Again, like a blood pressure, not everyone needs a full-on dietitian one time a week for 12 weeks, right? Like there are online resources. So starting to really change our understanding of how mind and body is connected, getting comfortable with a score, a data point, and starting to culturally become comfortable with lots of options for people to manage their mental health and their overall health is what I'm really hopeful about.
Very, absolutely. And Chris?
Yeah, I think to sum it up, I like that word hope. I think that is what we really need at this point in society here. Part of it, I think if it becomes more of a universal thing, getting people the right level of care, that in itself would help to destigmatize what mental health is, or mental health, seeking mental health care, right? Because I think the stigma comes from historically people go and the very institution, they go see a psychiatrist and it becomes this big ordeal. But if it's hey, you can go see a therapist, you can see a marriage and family therapist or some peer support, non-licensed professional, then that would open up the conversation, especially as more, it opens up how many people can be served, and therefore it allows that to be a normalized thing within society rather than, hey, whispers of knowing somebody, one person in your neighborhood or in your company or in your church who is seeking care, right? If everybody has some level of support, I think that's what moves destigmatizes and moves the conversation forward.
Well, thank you so much, Chris and Michelle. Maybe next time we could steal 17.5 minutes and do a bit larger discussion. So thank you very much, everyone. Again, I hope, again, it was a great discussion and I look forward to more. And Stan, over to you.
That's fantastic, Howard, and really appreciate your leadership on that panel. Thank you very much. Yeah.
My pleasure.
Just a wonderful and deep discussion, very thoughtful, very intentional about what is happening in mental health today and what is happening in the ecosystem and how we can support it better. And as we're going into hour number 3 here between 1 and 2 o'clock, we kick it off with just a tremendous leader in the global health system and someone who's putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 with just amplifying what's going on in healthcare through her very unique and very novel approach to improving global health and certainly global stability through democracy investments. Julie, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Stan. Good to see you again.
It's great to see you again too. And if you could, just for the audience who's listening around the world, folks who don't know you, just describe a little bit about your background. You have a tremendous journey, really impressive background yourself. And then obviously we'd love to hear more about what Democracy Investments does.
Thank you. Yes, I started my career in the Navy actually, and listening to the previous panelists, I was reflecting on the important mental health and suicide prevention programs for those who serve. And it's really exciting to see all the advancements going on in the world. Today, I run a fund that at a very high level rewards democracies and encourages authoritarians to become more democratic. I use the same all-world ex-US index that's in most of your general international index strategies, but I neutrally tilt to award democracies. And our methodology uses the Economist Democracy Index, which rewards countries that have more women in government, freedom of speech, free media, freedom of internet. So all the issues we're talking about today are rewarded. And interestingly, when you look under the covers, democracies generally have better health, mental health and physical health, because most of the health vulnerabilities we see are a direct result of human rights violations. And my methodology takes that into account, whereas the other, even the large ESG funds, interestingly, their top holdings include 2 very well-known tech companies that contribute to an authoritarian surveillance state.
That's specifically and really unbelievably accurate. We love to hear that. And it's important to understand even when healthcare systems become destabilized, like what we've seen during the pandemic, we see democracies become destabilized. And so it's important to understand that there's a direct correlation here within the ecosystem that you're working in and all the good work that you're doing. And as public health professionals here, our audience wants to help out. They want to certainly do whatever they can do to understand this as a macro issue, but then understand how digital can play a part in this. So talk a little bit more about the correlations between democracies around the world and mental health and women's health and what you've seen from your global view there and all the work that you're doing.
Sure. Well, we've all seen that populism and extremism are serious threats to democracy. In addition to mental health challenges, there's also the substance abuse disorders. There's the technology contributing to misinformation and disinformation. Democracies that thrive ensure civil engagement, and they used evidence-based policy. They encourage social mobility, freedom from corruption, freedom of thought. On the contrary, authoritarians are constraining knowledge, and they may even use brute force and technology to control people. In authoritarian states, we see more conflicts and warfare, and that has a long-term destabilization effect, not only on veterans, but the brain health of their families. So that, combined with the increase we're seeing in the lack of hope and despair, that actually the deaths of despair, so suicide, alcohol and drug-related deaths, have lowered the life expectancy in the US. So it's important. The good thing about democracies, they're looking at these digitization strategies and taking notice. And we just saw a TikTok ban in one of our states. So democracies, to be effective, they need to have a well-informed population. They need to be resilient to foreign influence, and they need to provide a capacity for effective public debate. So regulating these digital platforms is going to be critical to preserve democracy and stop the extremism and populism that we're seeing around the world. Sadly, democracy is in decline. It is not, the scores are not going up every year. Certain democracies are getting better, but in general, the trends are downward. Interestingly, there are 46 countries in my preparation for this, I found, that have national suicide prevention programs. And some that have seen good results from that include Denmark, the UK, Switzerland, the Philippines, and South Korea. So there's something that can be learned for national strategies. And then all these predictive technologies. Also important are education systems that foster optimal early brain development. The young minds of the future need to be protected and protected from too much tech so they can develop appropriately. We need them for the future.
That's fantastic. And give us a little bit of an update on democracy investments and the fund and some of the things that, some of the technology, some of the life science and healthcare technologies that you have invested in, taken a stake in some of the world's leading democracies.
Yeah, I'm just back from a large conference in Florida where we got very good feedback. Our fund is over 2 years old now. And that is, and for a passive index strategy, we have done very well relative to the benchmark market cap only strategies that just look at company size. I start with that same basket of stocks and then neutrally reweight them according to the country's democracy score. So I'm not picking specific stock, but I'm in all the same sectors. So we have the same healthcare technologies and healthcare companies in our fund, but you're getting more in the democratic countries that support all the things we just talked about, and you have less in the authoritarians. And the reason we don't screen any country out is because when would you let them back in when they improve their democracy score? Also, this way, we even created a strategy that incentivized improvement. As if we get to be as big as a Vanguard fund, all countries will be incentivized to improve their democracy score to get more capital. The strategies that screen out, it's great, but there's actually not a lot of evidence out there that by screening out, you're having impact because companies are not incentivized to take action to improve.
That's fantastic. And certainly, you know, from the audience that's listening to you around the world and the folks that are tuned in, how can poor mental health be a weakening factor for democracies in terms of your experiences and what you've seen, some of the research you've read?
Yeah, so it's weakening, generally because of misinformation and social media being weaponized to increase polarization and tear countries apart. There's actually an excellent book called Twilight of Democracy that was the story of what happened in Poland that kind of brings it all together, and it's a very quick read. People want to read more about that. Yeah, so authoritarians use media and disinformation as a weapon. And I mean, it's hard to know if you're talking to a bot or somebody real. And it's so important now to make sure you know what information is real, and you use social media in small doses so it doesn't contribute to poor mental health.
That's right. That's exactly right. And in terms of some of the like the ETF, I think you have an ETF now, or what are some of the things that Democracy Investments is doing now to, and some of the ways that the folks that are listening can get involved to help out and support?
So we have one product now. It's an ETF, so it's very liquid. It's listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The ticker symbol is DMCY, and you can get more information and read important disclosures at democracyinvestments.com.
It's fantastic. And just full disclosure, and I don't have any money with this ETF or any of this fund or anything like that. And I don't think anyone that the lab does either, unless Ainsley and Jerry are doing some investing on the side without disclosing on their conflicts of interest. So we're literally putting Julie together here with you all so that hopefully there's a way that we can all support this and really try to help support healthcare and democracies globally, because again, from my understanding, Rachel, you do have a number of different healthcare companies that your fund and your ETF is tracking on or investing in, or whatever the word is, I guess, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we're in every large cap or mid cap healthcare company that's in your typical international index strategy. We're just giving more to democracies and less to authoritarians.
It's fantastic. So that's really solid news. And in terms of how we can help you out, what can the community here, and just, you know, again, looking through the folks who are in attendance right now, you have people who are high net worth individuals. You obviously have folks who are CEOs of digital health companies. You've got a number of different scientists. You've got physicians who are, again, high net worth individuals as well. You've got executives with major healthcare organizations, hospitals, health plans, life science companies, and then a lot of venture funds, certainly. And so what can they do to help your fund, aside obviously from, spending, $23 it looks like it's trading at right now for buying whatever, I guess you get a share or something of the ETF or something. I'm not a finance guy, I'm a tech guy, remember. So anyway, the idea is that, is there a way for them to volunteer? Can they be a venture partner? Can they do, how can they help Democracy Investments really spread the word and, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, the best thing you could do would be to follow us on social media, but we're only active on LinkedIn. Follow me and Democracy Investments on LinkedIn, and please share our strategy with your friends, family, with your networks, with your advisor. We're a new fund, we're not a Vanguard, and so we are word of mouth. And the most helpful thing you could do is buy a little, see if you can keep an eye on us, and share our strategy with your friends and family.
That's fantastic. No, absolutely. And we'll certainly get the word out there. And again, if any of you have any questions, Ainsley had put the contact information for Julie within the page, within the chat box. And so certainly, look her up. We did have a question come in from somebody about the general barriers to adoption of health tech. And, obviously healthcare technology it includes pills, it includes biotechnology, it includes medical devices, and obviously now, computer sciences and digital health, whether it's telemedicine platforms or whether it's things like digital health therapeutics, et cetera. So what have you seen, Julie, in terms of some of the ways that democracies are helping overcome some of the barriers to access to medical technologies like pills and electronic health records and things like that?
Well, democracies tend to be more progressive and open-minded. They do more, as I said, they do more evidence-based policy, and you see more corruption in the authoritarian states. So generally, it's much easier for a tech company to get financed. It's a stronger, more vibrant VC community, and you don't see that with authoritarian states. So, So generally, it's those economy. I mean, I can think of maybe one or two authoritarians that have a strong financing community for that sector. Otherwise, it's democracies is where it's all happening, and democracies encourage innovation and support innovation across country lines as well. Whereas you do not see that. Generally, authoritarians have to steal the innovation and steal the tech.
That's really helpful. So again, Julie, thank you for joining us today, and we'll certainly keep the word going about Democracy Investments and your ETF and keep it moving. But and looking forward to more and more success for you and your fund and healthcare around the world, certainly in democracies.
Thank you, Stan. Thanks for having me.
Just a tremendous opportunity for everyone to hear about someone who's taken on healthcare and global healthcare in a little bit different fashion to the world of finance. So always good to hear from the good folks at Democracy Investments. And from Democracy Investments to Memorial Sloan Kettering, we're really lucky to have our next guest. And she's been working really hard in terms of trying to reduce the widening gap that's happening in women's health and mental health. And I think one of the things that we're going to talk about over the next 10 minutes is really what Lornick has picked up and some of the lessons that she's been able to gather over the years of her experience. Lornick, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Maybe you could give everyone a little bit of your background and what you do at MSK.
Absolutely, Stan. First, thank you so much for the opportunity. Great to be here. And hello to everyone. I know we have folks across the globe joining the call. My name is Lornick Esai, and I worked as Associate Director of Digital Clinical Safety at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I have over 15 years of clinical experience, but several years of digital health experience, particularly. What is near and dear to my heart is, of course, women's health and clinical safety in general. So I'm excited to chat about it.
That's fantastic. And if you could just start us off with some of the perspectives that you've picked up over the last few years on how COVID has widened the gap in both women's health and mental health in the world that you work in cancer in New York City?
Absolutely. I mean, I will start with the very obvious statement of COVID truly changed the way everything socially we were living, the reality that we were living. And it had countless impacts, specifically on women's physical, but also overall well-being, including mental health. And I think what is challenging with mental health is mental health toll is that it's really hard to quantify it, but the impact, if not more, is very alarming, unfortunately. And as the pandemic stretched for last few years at least, data also thankfully emerged showing that the toll has been definitely unequal on women's mental and emotional health. And while the COVID infection, we all know, had more severe consequences physically on men, but the mental health consequences for women dealing with that, dealing with not only their care and health, but also family members' health, I think has been stressed that disproportionately affected women both at work and also at home. One of the things that I would like to actually highlight is that there are a lot of studies out there now, again, thanks to collected data over the last couple of years, that one of them was very significant, showing about over 80% of women users reported a significant increase with their depression and mental health burden compared to around 1/3 of men, every third man basically reported that they have noticed significant increase in their mental health. So that is certainly alarming, and this is definitely multifactorial, and we could talk about this for days, but one big factor has been that has been reported out by different entities, social entities, was the dramatic increase of intimate partner violence and violence at home, which put women at an especially high risk for developing mental health problems. And what is shocking and reassuring in the validating this factor is globally we see that dynamic. Unfortunately, we have seen that dynamic during COVID. So it's independent of the culture, but the practice of having women trapped at home with their partners that they have been abused has been a big driver of mental health burden for women, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great that you're bringing that to the front and to the attention of everyone as well. And in terms of the work that you've done, how have you seen the ability to manage stress, especially to folks who are turning to an in-person work-life balance? What are you seeing, and what are you seeing them do to do that, and how is it working?
Yeah. It's very encouraging, to be very honest, in terms of seeing how creative women can get in terms of approaches and facing their challenges. I think it definitely has two parts. Personally, being a woman and talking even with my network of female friends and colleagues, I have been impressed how creative we can become in overcoming systems and policies that will take years and years to change and adapt to the new dynamic post-COVID. One of the things that I have definitely noticed is in terms of the dynamics of the society, having the children going back to school, of course, has been super helpful. Another factor playing has been more workplaces have been open to remote working and hybrid working, flexible schedule, which has been a tremendous help in terms of giving that flexibility to women to take care of their family and loved ones at home, but also being able to pursue their career, which is part of the mental health, which is part of their self-reassuring practices that they need outside of home. So those have been good dynamics that we see. There are some struggles now as the post-pandemic era is kind of more defining work-life balance, and there are a lot of studies. There was a recent Google study on what is the best work model currently that we need to pursue in terms of best addressing society's new needs. And they came up with the hybrid model, which I think it's the way that most of women trying to pursue with their workplaces. And on that end, I would definitely emphasize, if folks are on the phase of their life that they're starting new career, make sure the workplace is either four-day workplace, which unfortunately we don't have many of them in US yet, but hopefully they will expand soon, or hybrid work model. And I think setting those boundaries with your HR partner, with your managers, has been super helpful.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Lornik. I really appreciate your time, knowing how busy you are at MSK, carrying the banner and the flag for all of these important initiatives. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing you at the summit in June in Columbia. And please have a great Memorial Day weekend. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
So again, seeing all the good work that's going on around the country, around the world in women's health and mental health. Don't forget to sign up for Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, and particularly the one coming up this next Wednesday, which is going to be amazing. So click on the QR code there and bring a friend. Make sure you sign up and join the chat and join the networking that occurs on our virtual events for free for everybody. Speaking of joining and learning a lot, we've got a tremendous session coming up next with HITLAB's own Lisa Crimes, and one of our tremendous partners from 3F, and one of the leading distributors in the country, and certainly the most innovative out there, Melissa Lohr, who is the Chief Compliance Officer from 3F. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining today and handing the virtual podium over to you, Lisa.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Hi, Melissa. Good to see you again.
Hi, how are you, Lisa?
Wonderful. Speaking of Women's Health Tech Wednesday, we just got to speak yesterday, so I feel like I'm ahead here. So wonderful to see you again. And why don't we just start with you introducing yourself for the audience today, and a little bit about your background again.
Sure. I'm a legal and compliance professional. I worked in private practice for about 10 years before going in-house into the life sciences and pharmaceutical industry. And I was there at manufacturers for about 12 years before I joined FFF on the distribution side of things. And I've held various legal and compliance roles throughout that. So I'm excited to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I know you defined this yesterday, but for the audience today, can you define diversity? What's your view of that?
Yeah, I think, there's so many aspects to diversity. It's really multifaceted, and we hear a lot about racial and ethnic diversity and gender diversity, and those are really critical. But I think we also need to make sure that we're including other types of diversity when we think about, bringing people together, trying to get new ideas. There's diversity of thought, there's diversity of experience, and just thinking about that when you bring a team together or when you're hiring, I think it is really very important. And then since we're talking about mental health today, the inclusion aspect, I think, of diversity is really important. Making sure that people who are diverse feel like they can be their authentic selves when they are at work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what about the importance of women's voice in business, very specifically in the healthcare setting?
Well, as I mentioned, kind of when you bring together that diverse group, I think you get better ideas. You have a better end result. And, the reality is, at least in this country, women make 80% of the healthcare decisions. And so, that's not just for them, that's for their families, whether that's children or partners, aging parents. They really are the true consumer here. And so, hearing their voices, understanding what they want, what they think would be helpful, what they need, to me is really the bottom line. You can't ignore women in this area because they're the ones who are going to be making all the decisions.
Absolutely. And I learned a lot about this from you yesterday, but could you also share again some of those the areas of women's health that need more attention?
Yeah, I think, I mean, sadly, there are so many to choose from. But I think, we're doing better. I think a huge one that was definitely impacted negatively by the pandemic is preventative screenings, right? So, going in and getting mammograms or, screening for various cancers or for osteoporosis. So there's all kinds of different preventive care that I think women in particular sometimes, do ourselves a disservice by, putting our health on the back burner as we take care of everyone else. And so, I think we need to do a better job of making sure that preventive care is available, but also making sure that women, can give themselves permission, can, take that time, whether it's from work, whether it's from family activities, whatever it is, to make sure that they are getting screened for those things, because the success rate in, either preventing altogether or, treating something is so much better with early detection. So that's definitely one area. Another area, which is right on point for today's topic is mental health. And, particularly when we think about, reproductive health. And, I'll share a personal experience of mine. Those of you who were on yesterday learned that I have 5 children, all happy and healthy. But after my 5th child, I actually had some pretty bad postpartum depression. And I will tell you the challenges that I encountered just trying to find someone to go see were unbelievable to me. I thought, here I am, I'm an educated person with resources. I went to my OBGYN, I went to my pediatrician. When I took my child in for their first visit to say, hey, do you have anyone you recommend? I reached out to all kinds of places, and the referrals I was getting, I'd call and they'd say, we can get you in 5 weeks. That's not okay. So we need to do a better job of making sure that women's health is prioritized. They do so much to hold our society together. They're the glue. We need to make sure we take care of them.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably an all too familiar story. So thank you for sharing that personal perspective on that as well. So just as we wrap this up, what would you say, or what would your recommendation be on how women can maybe start to prioritize their health more, or just even be heard?
I think first of all, you do have to prioritize in the same way that you prioritize the other things that are in your life, right? So if you've got, your to-do list of things that you need to take care of, you need to write those down on there, make them something that you need to check off, schedule your mammogram, go see the doctor, go see the dentist, whatever that particular thing is. I've also heard, women taking a day of PTO or, if you have the ability to take a day, go schedule all your appointments in one day, right? I'm going to go just knock it out. I'm going to get everything done. But then you've taken that time, to devote to yourself. So I think there's some strategies we can do to make sure we're prioritizing that care and being heard. I hear so many stories about women who have reported things to medical, care providers and are just ignored. And it's really unfortunate. I think we just have to make sure we continue to use our voices and we speak up. If we know our bodies best, we know what's happening, and we really just have to keep saying it. And if someone won't listen, you go to the next person until, we get to a place where women are trusted about what's going on with their bodies and their minds.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Well, thank you again for joining. In case the audience did not get to hear the full session yesterday, I encourage you to go back and listen to that on YouTube. It'll be available in the next week or so. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Stan.
It's wonderful. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. And just a tremendous session and really understanding what's going on in the front lines of women's health and mental health, not only from an ecosystem standpoint, but from some personal anecdotes. I think anyone with 5 kids is a great way to provide a testimony as to what we're going through as a society. And again, as Tricia San Diego from AARP announced or mentioned earlier, it's not a sandwich generation anymore, it's a panini generation. People are just getting squished. Unlike a traditional sandwich, they're getting squished like a panini. So don't forget to sign up for the Innovator Summit and Digital Health Week New York City, coming up June 27, 28, 29, with all kinds of cocktail hours and dinners and whatnot. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all over New York City. Looking forward to seeing you all there if you haven't already signed up. And again, we are in our last 30 minutes of the 3-hour Symposia extravaganza here today. And with that, super excited to have 2 executives from Pfizer who have been at the front lines of digital health, not just for the last few years, but for a couple of decades now, and really understand digital health at its core. And Gati's smiling. I know, Gati, you don't look a couple of decades old. You're fine, but it's true. You've been out there. You have a ton of experience. The audience here is excited to hear about both of what you can bring in terms of insights and perspectives on this equation around women's health and mental health. Gati, if you could start off with a 1-minute bio for the audience, and then you can follow her.
Sure. No, thank you, Stan. Gati Darani, I'm part of Pfizer's digital innovation team. I've been working with Pfizer's key business leaders like Jen Alper, who's on, to really identify opportunities where tech can be an enabler for impact and change, whether it's for our patients, for the physicians that we work with to get the right product to patients, or in our clinical trials. So that's been the focus of my work. I've been really excited to be partnering with Jen and her team on the women's health initiatives happening at Pfizer, because we all know there's so much to be done. We women deserve exceptional care, and we're getting, I would say, subpar care today. So how do we use tech to promote better health for women and ultimately for families and society as a whole? I'll pass it to my colleague, Jen.
Super. Thank you, Jen.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for that warm welcome and introduction, Gati, as well. Hi, Jen Alper. I am the lead of the Pfizer Women's Health portfolio across menopause. I've been at Pfizer for 15 years in various leadership roles spanning US, global, amongst oncology, primary care. And prior to my current role, I was in the marketing transformation group. Very excited to be here today to share 2 of my passions, one of which is the importance of women as a primary, distinct customer group with whom we should be really focused on. And second, the use of digital tools to help enable and reach those customers. So looking forward to the conversation, Stan.
That's fantastic. And Jen, maybe you could take this question to start with, but can you talk a little bit more about how awareness for women's health is changing from your perspective in the US and around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll speak a little bit broadly to start. I think it's becoming very much more clear, certainly at Pfizer, that women are the primary consumers of healthcare. I heard that in the previous talk, so we are very much focused there as well. Overall, I think there's a lot of awareness that women are generally underserved in the healthcare system as well. Takes longer to get diagnosed, takes longer to get treatment, regardless of the disease state. However, as it relates to my world, in the menopause portfolio, menopause is having a bit of a moment right now. Internally, we talk a little bit about how menopause is hot. Gone are the days of stigmatized women's conditions that we didn't really speak about in polite company, so to speak. Women broadly are expressing their discontent with how menopause, and quite frankly, many other conditions, are being deprioritized or being stigmatized. We're hearing from women online, we're hearing from women in person, and they're really, this generation is taking control of this very incorrect and hollow narrative, rebranding midlife. Some are creating wellness companies, telehealth companies focused on women's health, as you know, many other digital focused companies, even large companies as well. CVS, very focused on women's health, and a number of other companies as well. And in the menopause space, there's an increased hunger for information, for action. You may have seen there's been a number of New York Times articles. Oprah just led a conversation called the Menopause Talk. There's 58 million postmenopausal women in the US, and the vast majority, 85%, experience symptoms related to menopause. So all this to say that awareness for women's health is changing, in that there is an awareness around a focus on women's health, and there is an awareness that women want to be treated differently and really want to take control of their health.
That's incredible. Yeah, and clearly the numbers are staggering, right? We do see just how, not only in terms of the numbers and the volumes, the dollars that are out there, but also the outcomes and how poor they are, with the biggest one being 38th ranked in maternal mortality care. And so, Gati, jumping over to the strategy and the innovation side of what's going on here, can you speak to the audience a little bit about digital health and how it's helping drive some of these improvements around women's health and mental health?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm sure you've all heard the term femtech, and so that became, a big trend area when you look at the investor community. So the VCs, academia, and the accelerators were really focusing in on building out cohorts of companies that were tech enabled to support women in their health journey. I think the word femtech actually takes away, however, from how we can actually support women, because it's not just about reproductive health, right? It's not just about fertility treatments and menopause and endometriosis. I mean, those are all very important areas where women need support. But if you look at how Jen described it as women as a distinct channel, we are disproportionately affected by many diseases. We experience many diseases differently. I think you've probably heard the anecdote or the stat that women were actually not enrolled into clinical trials until the early 1990s. And I can say I haven't been around for so many decades, but I was around for that decade, which means that I'm taking drugs that actually were not actually tested on women at some point in time. And there's more and more work being done to increase the diversity in clinical trials, both from a gender standpoint, but then also from racial and diversity standpoint. So I think that when we talk about the tech sector in general, and we talk about women's health in general, the money is going where the need is and the want is, and that want is in this women's health space. There's more and more companies entering into Series B, Series C, in approaching very large exits, companies that I work closely with. So it's a really exciting time in the industry. And I think that, Stan, you also mentioned mental health. I mean, that's a huge component also when you think about the life cycle of any patient journey, right? As you're managing any disease area, we need to make mental health a huge part of that patient support service. And I think tech has the ability to do that at mass scale. And at a price point that works for the patients we're trying to support.
That's 100% correct, right? And that really does go toward the heart of what we're trying to achieve. And Jen, talk a little bit about that. We talked a little bit in the first hour about empathy, and how and Amy West was on from Novo Nordisk, who heads up digital transformation at Novo US, and she was talking about really needing to come from a point of empathy, and that's obviously something that both you and Gati embody as a part of this movement, really within Pfizer and around the world. What is it that you see in terms of the need for people, whether it's the people in the audience who are with other manufacturers or digital health startups or investors? Where does empathy come in, and how do they gain more empathy, more context to develop better solutions, to invest in better solutions, to buy better solutions, to deploy across the enterprise?
One way I think that we can develop better empathy is putting ourselves specifically in the customer's shoes, and the execution of that is around targeting. So if you're targeting the female population, micro-targeting different types of women depending on where they are. So rather than having a broad-based sort of patient strategy, having micro strategies so that we understand the specifics of where patients are coming from. Because I think the campaign, the messaging, the execution could be very different depending on who specifically you're talking about, what type of patient you're talking to, what type of female you're talking to make sure that you really understand those needs. And we can get there with data and a real deep understanding. The sort of marrying of data with deep customer insights and understanding, I think, is a real win. The second thing I would say is just recognizing the differences in the female population for some of these disease states, and certainly this is the case in menopause, around broadly how we are speaking to patients. So one example is, in all of our DTC advertising, it's talk to your doctor, talk to your doctor. Well, what we're finding in the menopause space and in the women's health space is that many times physicians have been engaging with their physician, but are being, put to the side and sort of saying, well, maybe you do need a therapy, maybe not. And so empathy really starts with understanding the patient and understanding what they're going through so that we can adapt our messaging.
That's spot on. Yeah, that is absolutely critical. And Gati, certainly want to follow up on the empathy question for you as well, but would love to know more about some of what you've seen in terms of where the audience, the people that are listening now and will listen in the future, where are some of the areas where we can all improve on building digital health platforms and building, better digital health technologies to help scale women's health that's out there?
Yeah, no, I think it starts with like Jen said, where the customer is and where the pain point is. I think we've done a lot of research. Jen's team has done some great patient research, even just non-pharma related customer research to understand where are those pain points in the women's health journey. And a lot of times it's caregiver burden or lack of societal support to actually manage their own disease on top of everything else that they're doing. So I think it's trying to understand the holistic experience of the patients that we're looking to support, and in this case, women. Often they're entering menopause at the same time as they're really advancing in their career or have children or are becoming caregivers to elderly parents. So it's kind of this trifecta that hits women around these age groups. So how do we support more at a systems level? So in addition to their healthcare and providing them tech solutions and services, going to employers and saying, here's an amazing tech-enabled community for your employees of a certain age range that might be perimenopause or menopausal to go into, where they can speak to other women like them who are advancing in their career and don't want to stop just because they're experiencing this life event. So I think it's going beyond the tech, and beyond the products that we're looking to sell, but understanding that whole experience of a woman, where she's at when she's affected by these various conditions and diseases. And then it goes all the way to the end of life, right? I mean, women are disproportionately affected by rheumatoid arthritis, by osteoporosis, et cetera. So how do we support women as they age and as they gain more access to medical needs? How do we help them with technology to drive them through those comorbidities as well?
That's great. And Jen, we look at resources that are out there. Obviously, you both are experts in this. Where would you tell our audience to go to dig deeper into this and to find more resources in this area?
So I can speak specifically to the resources, the patient resources across the women's health franchise. However, I would say broadly, when developing or looking for patient resources, I always think that advocacy organizations, women's health advocacy organizations, are an excellent source of data and information for patients. And very often, we at Pfizer will partner with certain advocacy organizations to ensure that we are speaking with the right tone, the right information, making sure that we are partnering together on the various disease states. So first and foremost, I would say advocacy is an excellent resource. But specifically within my world, in the women's health franchise and menopause, we have number of resources across menopause, uterine fibroids, endometriosis. There's certainly your traditional DTC focus, sort of online social adherence programs, access support programs, all things like that to ensure a positive customer experience. We also have a uterine health guide, which is a call to action for menstrual awareness. understanding when patients should flag their flow, and Menopause Unmuted, which is a podcast hosted by Jane Minkin to raise awareness, encourage communication, and share information among patients. But broadly, even these resources that I'm mentioning, we have really a history at Pfizer of partnering with advocacy organizations to ensure we have the right content to share with our patients.
That's fantastic. And I think, that really is the kind of the resources that people are looking for. And we've already got a couple of questions in the chat box around resources around menopause and things like that. And Gati, any other resources? Again, both these folks coming in around menopause and looking for more information around not only just where to get more information on menopause, but also how to reduce stigma around menopause. Any advice for them there, Gati?
No, I think it's just more awareness building, helping women have conversations with their practitioners and understand their own symptomology, empowering them with that knowledge. Same goes for uterine fibroids, for example. I mean, they're grossly underdiagnosed. Often patients don't know they've lived with them their whole life and have been in immense pain. They just thought it was normal, part of their menstrual cycle. It's not until they're in a surgical ward for ovarian cancer, they're like, oh, by the way, you have uterine fibroids. So like this lack of information that's just so pervasive, and I think it's partially because of the stigma around the conversations related to women's health. If we can start breaking down those barriers, having more open dialogue and discussions, and creating these communities for women to give them the language and the literacy to talk to their practitioners, I think that's the start of the whole movement.
It's fantastic. Well, Gati, Jen, thank you both for joining us today. Just tremendous observations and just context and brilliance added to what people are really trying to help promote and support and grow. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
And again, this is just part of what we're doing here today is to help build perspectives, share perspectives, and create a lot more empathy around what everyone is going through, obviously, to reduce the gap that we're seeing in women's health and certainly women's health tech and digital health. So with that, now we're moving into our last session. But before we do that, it's important to remember to join the lab where you can and how you can. And remember that we have the Breakthrough Alliance, which is a group of executives from across all different sectors in healthcare, hospitals, health plans, life science companies, government organizations, international trade groups, investors, digital health startups, and the like. And so it's this like-minded group of folks who are very active in not only promoting the best in research, but sharing research, sharing perspectives, et cetera. So if you're interested in joining this, or your organization is interested in joining the board or as one of the committees or just a general membership, do click on the QR code and get in touch with us, and happy to talk to you more about that opportunity as well, again, around building empathy. And next up is our last session of the day, the president of the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, Bill Taranto, with our very own Jamie Meyerson from Maven, a local New York City rep and a legacy at Columbia as well. So looking forward to hearing this session coming up.
Thank you, Stan. It's always a pleasure to be here with the HITLAB team. I'm really excited today to talk to Jamie Meyerson, who's Vice President of Network Strategy and Operations at the Maven Clinic. Got a lot of good questions for her today, and thank you for joining us today, Jamie. So the first question is, we have kind of a vast audience. Sometimes it's students, sometimes it's entrepreneurs, sometimes it's executives. For the audience that don't know anything about you, can you tell them a little about your journey? How'd you start your career? Then how'd you end up where you are today as Vice President of Network Strategy and Operations at the Maven Clinic?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for having me here today. I think for me, I'm lucky in that I always knew I wanted to work in healthcare, very broadly defined. In undergrad, I actually was more interested on healthcare policy and equity. I wanted to be a science journalist at some point. But really by the end of undergrad, decided I wanted to gain stronger business acumen and to work on really the scaling company side of the house to solve problems that I was really passionate about and interested in. So that first took the form of joining Deloitte Strategy and Operations consulting practice here in New York City, worked on a bunch of different industries, spent some time in development finance, public-private partnerships, and really took the opportunity to focus back on healthcare and the problems I was really wanting to solve in business school. So while pursuing my MBA, I again worked on healthcare technology problems, global health issues, and at that time really wanted to hone in on value-based care. So I was lucky to be connected from actually a former colleague to Mount Sinai Health Partners, which is a population health group within Mount Sinai system that very specifically focuses on commercializing different products to drive value-based care deals. So that could look like transitioning clinics from fee-for-service to value-based care payment models, or helping build different specialty care bundles. So I really learned how healthcare was delivered on the ground and what different payment models existed. And by the end of those 2 years, I think it set me up really well to make the jump to a startup, which I knew I actually always wanted to do, and was lucky enough to be connected to Maven Clinic. And at that time, it was Series B, around 40 to 60 people. Now fast forward, exceeded 500. So I've really seen that that scaling story here at the company, and have essentially worked to build out all of the different internal teams that's needed to scale and operate a clinical network. So happy to talk more about that and Maven Clinic broadly, but we'll pause there.
Okay, well, what great career journey. Again, really happy to have you here. So let's just talk broadly for a minute about your exact role that you have and what you kind of do on a daily basis, so we get a real understanding of what it means when you're talking about network strategy and head of operations and those type of things.
Yeah, certainly. So even to frame that response, I'd love to provide a bit of color on Maven and its really core offering, the problem it's solving. So with that said, Maven really is solving access to women's health and family planning services that have really been hard to come by over the past decade. So I'm really proud, honestly, to work at a company that's meeting the moment, has been meeting the moment. And again, at its core, Maven offers synchronous and asynchronous visits to over 30 specialists. And that spans everything from OBGYNs, pediatricians, all the way through the coaching side of the house, like lactation consultants, sleep coaches. So it really is a platform that connects people to on-demand care, in addition to content and community forums that really support you on no matter what journey you're on family planning. And again, that can mean thinking about having a family, more on the fertility side of the house, through actively being pregnant and in maternity, through postpartum, pediatrics, and now all the way up through menopause. So with that said, and the reason why I want to give that framing is, at the end of the day, you need people to power that. You need the specialists, and that's what the network really means. It means the network of all of those hundreds of providers across all 50 states in the US and now internationally. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, even kind of fundamentally, what specialists are we offering, to what wait times are we staffing the network, what states are we operating in, how are we expanding globally, into what countries? And I would say that's really my mandate. How do you drive to those decisions? How do you look at supply and demand models, commercial sales, layered in with the clinical outcomes we're trying to drive, layered in with the member and the provider experience we want to achieve, to be able to truly roll out the best-in-class product to meet member needs.
So I want to just, it's part of my next question, but it's part of the expansion piece and access, because I think access is, tremendously important in healthcare. How do you think about that when you think about, adding either specialists, expanding into other states, or even expanding globally, which I didn't realize that was something you were looking at? How do you think about that, and what kind of decisions go into, where you might go next, and how do you think broadly about access?
Yeah, certainly. So starting with the access side, a stat that always really rings true with me is in the US, the average wait time for an OBGYN right now is something like 31 days. On Maven, you can speak to an OB within 2 hours. So even just that piece of access, like you have a question that day, you can get it answered that day is a core tenet for us. And then we think about, okay, how do we increase access, let's say across all 50 states? Because I should mention a big part of our business and how we go to market is through employer benefits. So especially when you have an employer that operates or has employees in all 50 states, and now per your question is a multinational and has people around the globe, the question is how can we offer access to Maven specialists with operational excellence, financial feasibility, regulatory compliance. So I would say those are kind of all the guardrail questions that you just need to consider as a business. And then again, what clinical outcomes are you trying to drive? So for example, if we're trying to support fertility outcomes or NICU admission reductions or improvements in mental health quality of life scoring, we take a step back and say, okay, what is Maven's care plan philosophy? What actions do we want members to take with their Maven providers, their in-person providers, to drive the outcomes that we're looking to help people achieve as our core business? And then also employers or health plans are looking to help their members achieve as well. So really all incentives are aligned.
Okay. And then because this is obviously HITLAB's around digital health, I'm curious how like tech-enabled solutions, you know, and how you think of those and how do they fit into your clinic operations?
Yeah. So Maven's at its heart is a tech-enabled services company, right? So I think I recently heard it described very well. Like when you open an Airbnb app and everything works, you can book instantly, or you open an Uber and everything works, you can book instantly. The same should apply to healthcare. You should be able to open an app and book instantly, or access the article, or get a push notification. Just everything needs to work well. And again, enable you to find the care that you need in that moment. So I think that could take the flavor of, or something I think a lot about is, how do you best support a member to have their needs met? A member might not know that a nutritionist might be the best person to answer their question versus an OBGYN or a midwife or a doula or a lactation consultant. So Maven can really help guide a member to the best person to answer their question. And I should also say another hallmark of Maven is our amazing care advocate, care navigation, customer support team. And they will essentially be your quarterback through the Maven experience. And they'll meet with you up front during an intro appointment and say, hey, I hear you. This is these are the types of questions you're looking to get answered. I recommend speaking with this person, this specialist, and again, guiding you through the experience. So it really is the tech element and the human element that make it successful.
Fantastic. So last question, our time always goes fast. As chairman of the Breakthrough Alliance, I'm intimately involved with HITLAB, and I'm just curious your relationship with HITLAB and what are you doing, you know, working with that group?
Yeah, so I believe I was first connected to HITLAB almost 7 years ago at this point, when I was a graduate student at Columbia, and since then I have always kept in touch. So I'll do things like the Women's Health Tech Wednesday series. I'm always willing to talk, get more involved, but I'm a huge supporter and proponent of these types of organizations, and generally accessible if anyone would like to reach out in the future.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us today. I really appreciate getting to know you and the Maven Clinic a little better, and hope to see you at one of the future HITLAB events. With that, Stan, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
That is spectacular. A great way to end up hour number 3 of the symposium. Thank you all for joining us today. It has been a crazy and an amazing and a very, very interesting day at this May Symposium on Women's Health, Mental Health Month. And again, thank you to all of our guests, and special thanks to our sponsors, again, the Merck Global Fund, and certainly all the good people at FFF. And then don't forget to sign up for the summit on June 27, 2029, live in New York City. You can also sign up to be remote and join there as well. And please do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which we just passed 1,000 subscribers on. Thanks to you again on that. And thank you to our production crew, Jerry, Ainsley, and everyone else. Just a tremendous session today. And looking forward to working with everyone, seeing you all again next month, June 27, 2029. And in the meantime, please do make sure you stay safe. Take care, everybody.